Chapter 240. In Jiang Chen's heart, the relationship between him and the Pill Pavilion and Array Pavilion was just that. Perhaps, to be precise, the Pill Pavilion and Array Pavilion might still have a lot of opinions about him. After all, when he was in Qingyun Town, Jiang Chen almost abducted the Pill Pavilion and Array Pavilion branches over there to the Chuanzuan sect. Although Qingyun Town was remote, this kind of thing was considered relatively sensational in Qingyun Town. After such a long time, the headquarters of the Pill Pavilion and Array Pavilion should already know. Then, now that Jiang Chen had just entered the middle court, the Pill Pavilion and Array Pavilion came to invite Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen did not know the meaning of this. Since he did not know, he would not enter the Array Pavilion and Pill Pavilion. It would not be too late to make plans after knowing the purpose of the Pill Pavilion and Array Pavilion. Then, Jiang Chen entered the cave abode, closed the door, and began to cultivate. Now, Jiang Chen had just entered the Exalted Realm and had not thought about what cultivation technique to cultivate. Since his rebirth, Jiang Chen had cultivated to perfection in every realm. He had mastered many cultivation techniques, and he knew that every cultivation technique had its strongest point. But now, what gave Jiang Chen a headache was what cultivation technique to cultivate in the Exalted Realm. In Jiang Chen's memory, there was no cultivation technique that was particularly suitable for the Exalted Realm. Headache. Jiang Chen covered his head and searched all his memories, but he could not find the cultivation technique he wanted. However, at this moment, an obscure memory appeared in Jiang Chen's mind. To be precise, this memory was not Jiang Chen's, but the memory in the Great Transformation's Divine King's blood essence. In this memory, there was an incomplete cultivation technique recorded. Coincidentally, it was the cultivation technique of the Exalted Realm. 6 Directions Art? After careful comprehension, Jiang Chen decided to cultivate the 6 Directions Art when he was in the Exalted Realm. The strength of the Exalted Realm was to condense one's essence and condense the Tao seed. The more essence condensed, the stronger the Tao seed condensed. And the strength of the Tao seed was directly related to the strength of the future realm. The stronger one's Tao seed was, the stronger one's connection with the great Tao of heaven and earth would be. Thus, one's comprehension and cultivation would be faster. Some people were able to cultivate a rank 9 Tao seed when they were in the Exalt realm. After entering the Earth realm, they were able to control an even stronger power of the Earth. Even after reaching the Heaven realm, he would be able to grasp an even stronger power of the heavens. To condense the essence, it was condensed from one's soul, blood, and bones. Of course, this was an ordinary cultivation method. As for the 6 Directions Art, it was no ordinary art. The 6 Directions Art emphasized the unity of the human and soul. He allowed the 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls to determine his fate, to become the heavens, unable to move. The 3 spirits were Qi, spirit, and essence. They were bound to the soul and could not be moved. The remaining 2 spiritual souls and 4 physical souls could be used for cultivation. As for the 6 Directions Art, it cultivated these 2 spiritual souls and 4 physical souls. Condensing one soul would allow one to condense a rank 3 Tao seed. If one successfully condensed 2 souls and 4 spirits, one would be able to condense a rank 18 Tao seed. Compared to an ordinary rank 9 Tao seed, it was an entire 2 times higher. What's more, ordinary cultivation methods could at most cultivate a rank 6 Tao seed. In that case, as long as he could cultivate the 6 Directions Art, Jiang Chen's strength in the Exalt realm would far surpass cultivators of the same realm. In addition, every realm had been cultivated to perfection. With the layers of strength, once Jiang Chen cultivated the 6 Directions Art, he might be able to fight head-on with people in the Earth realm or even the Heaven realm when he was in the Exalt realm. And this so-called head-on fight was under the condition that he did not use forbidden techniques and the Omni-Heavenly Lamp. What kind of existence is the Omni-Divine King? Jiang Chen whispered. He had a feeling that he was inextricably linked to the Omni-Divine King. However, Jiang Chen did not know what exactly the relationship was. He did not even want to think about it. This was because he could not even care about what was in front of him now. Since the Billows Academy's Martial Pavilion dared to issue a blood battle order to him, it meant that Xiao Qingyi was extremely powerful. Jiang Chun had never underestimated his opponent. Therefore, he was feeling some pressure at this moment. Moreover, Jiang Chun also knew very well that if there was one Xiao Qingyi, there would be a second one. If he was not powerful enough, it was very likely that he would die prematurely in the Billows Academy. Although Elder Qing had promised to protect Jiang Chun, it was not only the Martial Pavilion that wanted to deal with Jiang Chun, but also the disciples of the Billows Academy. In that case, what could Elder Qing do even if he intervened? Wouldn't that be breaking the rules? Therefore, if he wanted to establish a foothold in the Billows Academy, Jiang Chun could only protect himself. Of course, if he walked out of the Billows Academy, Jiang Chun's life would naturally be protected by the Billows Academy. 2 spiritual souls and 4 physical souls. It's very difficult to cultivate. Jiang Chun's expression was a little ugly after comprehending the 6 directions art. This was because every time he cultivated one spiritual soul, he had to go through 2 spiritual tribulations. Cultivating one physical soul, he had to go through 3 spiritual tribulations. Regardless of whether it was the spiritual tribulations or the physical tribulations, they were all top-notch heavenly tribulations. After being reborn, am I fated with heavenly tribulations? How many heavenly tribulations have I gone through? Jiang Chun smiled bitterly, not counting the heavenly punishment and divine punishment. Just the heavenly tribulations alone had gone through at least 3 to 5 times. Boom! Suddenly, an explosion came from above Jiang Chun's cave abode, and a wave of pressure filled the air. Heavenly tribulations? At that moment, Jiang Chun was dumbfounded. He had not done anything that violated the heavenly Tao recently, so why was there a heavenly tribulations again? However, Jiang Chun quickly came to his senses. Every time a monstrous genius broke through, there was a possibility of attracting a heavenly tribulation. This was not only the heavens' jealousy towards you, but it was also a kind of test. If you died in the heavenly tribulations, you would be killed by the heavens' jealousy. If you passed it, you would also receive a gift from the heavens. However, to go through a heavenly tribulation not long after entering the Billows Academy, wasn't that a little too high profile? However, thinking back to the time when he had just entered the Quadrant Divine Institute, Jiang Chun felt that he was already very low-key now. Previously, Nian Chang'e came to make trouble. This time, I should be able to pass through the heavenly tribulation smoothly, right? Jiang Chun muttered. He got up and walked out of the cave abode, then stood in the air. At the same time, Jiang Chun's cave abode was surrounded by people. Not every monstrous genius could attract a heavenly tribulation after breaking through. In fact, many people had not even seen what a heavenly tribulation looked like. At that moment, a group of onlookers looked at the blood-red tribulation clouds in the sky curiously, guessing what kind of heavenly tribulation it was. As the person involved, Jiang Chun was dumbfounded, and he wanted to curse the heavens in his heart. Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation? What sin did I commit? Why did you give me such a heavenly tribulation? Jiang Chun cursed in his heart, and he felt extremely guilty. The Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation. Only those who had committed serious crimes and were condemned by the heavens would receive such a heavenly tribulation. As for Jiang Chun, although he had taken lives, he had not committed any serious crimes. Then, what was this Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation? Could it be that the heavens were jealous of his talent? Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation? Looks like this guy is going to die under the heavenly tribulation without Xiao Qingyi's help. Awesome. Even the heavens can't stand going against the Martial Pavilion. Chapter 241. The people from the Martial Pavilion sneered, as if they could already see Jiang Chun dying under the heavenly tribulation. However, there were also people who looked solemn and nervous. Another monster had arrived at the Surge Academy. How powerful is this kid's talent to attract the Red Lotus Karmic Fire Tribulation? This kind of heavenly tribulation can be ranked among the ordinary heavenly tribulations. Ordinary people don't even have the courage to face it, let alone go through it. Accompanied by the clamor, blood-red lightning flashed in the blood-red tribulation cloud. After a few breaths, a blood-red lightning bolt, as big as a bucket, struck down at Jiang Chun with a loud boom. At the same time, the tribulation cloud suddenly transformed into a huge lotus flower, sprinkling down streaks of red flames. This part of the sky was instantly dyed red, as if the sky was dripping blood. However, it also exuded a destructive and sacred aura. The red lotus karmic fire purified all evil in the world. Evil man? He's definitely an evil man. Some people curse it inwardly. They didn't know Jiang Chun. However, looking at the heavenly tribulation, it did seem like it was punishing an evil man. What the F***? At this moment, Jiang Chun was hit by a bolt of lightning, and his entire body was smoking. His hair was pitch black, and cracks appeared on his entire body. Blood didn't spurt out because it was burned by the raging flames. 90% of Jiang Chun's blood, and even his essence blood, had been burned by such a lightning strike. At this rate, at most 10 bolts of lightning would kill Jiang Chun. Let's talk nicely, can't you? Jiang Chun raised his head and looked at the tribulation cloud. However, he muttered in his heart, "Is it because I opened the sky when I was the divine king? Now that I'm weak, you want to bully me?" Just as this thought appeared in his mind, the tribulation cloud suddenly changed and turned into an OK hand gesture. At this moment, Jiang Chun was F***ed. Previously, Jiang Chun was puzzled. How could the heavenly tribulation, after breaking through, be so ferocious? Only now did he understand that when he opened the sky and slashed the heavens had a spirit and were taking revenge on Jiang Chun. When I return to the ninth heaven divine world, I will definitely split open the sky. I'll fire you twice. No, 3 times, 10,000 times. Jiang Chun roared in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. What could he do? His cultivation wasn't high enough. Not to mention splitting open the sky. He couldn't even touch the sky. Then, he could only take a beating. Boom, boom. Following that, everyone only saw bolts of blood-red lightning as thick as buckets fall down and strike Jiang Chun. Even the air was filled with the smell of barbecued meat. Some people felt sorry for Jiang Chun, some laughed, and some were looking forward to Jiang Chun's death. Of course, there were also people who began to panic. Now a total of 36 bolts of lightning had struck down, but Jiang Chun still looked half dead. This gave people the illusion that Jiang Chun would die in the next bolt of lightning. However, every time the next bolt of lightning came, Jiang Chun would still hold on. Are you kidding me? It's already 36? How many do you plan to strike? At this moment, Jiang Chun was completely enraged. It wasn't like Jiang Chun didn't know how many bolts of lightning there were in the Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation. At most, there were 9 bolts. Now, he had struck 36 bolts. And, from the looks of it, there were more. Buy one, get one free. You can't give it away like this. How many have you given away? I don't want your discount. Jiang Chun felt bitter in his heart. Just as he finished speaking, another bolt of lightning came down on his face. This time, Jiang Chun couldn't take it anymore. Even though his recovery ability was amazing, and the blood and essence in his body were constantly recovering, he couldn't withstand such a strike. After a blood-red bolt of lightning struck, Jiang Chun's entire body trembled. His body swayed and fell from the sky. Boom! Accompanied by a dull thud, Jiang Chun's body fell. As his body was as strong as a rock, he actually smashed his own cave abode. Brother, please do me a favor and let me go this time. I won't split open the sky in the future. Jiang Chun admitted defeat. He felt that in front of the heavens, it was better to keep a low profile. If he really angered the heavens, the Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation would be endless. By then, the Jiang family and the Martial Pavilion wouldn't even need to do anything. The heavens would play him to death. Boom! Boom! However, the heavens were sentient and heartless. Jiang Chun admitted defeat, but the heavenly tribulation didn't agree. In the next half an incense stick's time, the heavenly tribulation continued to strike. The red lightning was like rain, and it didn't stop at all. Only after half an incense stick's time did the heavenly tribulation clouds dissipate, as if the heavens were embarrassed. At this moment, Jiang Qin's entire body was charred black, and his body was cracked. Only a little bit of blood and essence was left in his body. If he took another 2 hits, Jiang Qin was sure that he would definitely die. I finally made it. Jiang Qin lay on the ground. His entire body was weak, and he couldn't even move a finger. At the same time, Jiang Qin understood something. In this world, not only could one not offend women, but also the heavens. He didn't die? This is a good opportunity. The Martial Pavilion has the Blood Battle token, which is equivalent to a Death Exemption token. At this moment, a few people from the Martial Pavilion rushed toward Jiang Qin. Since the heavenly tribulation couldn't kill him, they would do it themselves. Anyway, the Martial Pavilion had the Blood Battle token. Even if they were punished to death, they could use the Blood Battle token to avoid death once. Kid, what sin have you committed? A total of 47 thunderbolts struck during the Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation. However, before the people from the Martial Pavilion could reach Jiang Qin, Lan Sui stood in front of Jiang Qin. He waved his hand, and a stream of pure spiritual energy rushed into Jiang Qin's body. He even took out an elixir pill and fed it to Jiang Qin. The pure spiritual energy entered Jiang Qin's body and transformed into the power of heaven and earth. After the elixir pill entered his body and melted, the blood and essence in his body recovered rapidly. In addition to Jiang Qin's special divine constitution and the power of the undying bird Tao soul, more than half of Jiang Qin's injuries were healed in just a dozen breaths. What are you doing here? At this moment, Jiang Qin suddenly stood up and looked at the group of youths from the Martial Pavilion, who were close by, and asked mockingly, "Nothing. We're just here to show our concern." Yes, we're just here to show our concern. The youths from the Martial Pavilion felt guilty. After explaining in a panic, they turned and left. After all, Jiang Qin's reputation was built from fighting. Ordinary disciples like them didn't dare to fight with Jiang Qin. Elder Qing wants to see you. Follow me, Lan Sui said softly and flew toward the back of the mountain. Jiang Qin was stunned for a moment, and he suddenly felt guilty. Could it be that Elder Qing knows that I've integrated the Zenith technique? Jiang Qin thought. If that was the case, he would have to share the Zenith technique with Elder Qing. Otherwise, if Elder Qing fell out with him, he would be suppressed in minutes. Chapter 242. In Elder Qing's cave residence at the back of the mountain, Jiang Qin stood in front of Elder Qing with a smile on his face. No one could tell what he was thinking about. Elder Qing was the same. His eyes were slightly cloudy, but there was a ray of light in the depths of his pupils. It was like the vast stars. Elder Qing, why are you looking for me? Are you going to help me? Jiang Qin laughed and said, You don't know that I've been bullied during this period of time. Elder Qing and Lan Sui looked at each other when they heard that. They didn't say anything. How could they not know what Jiang Qin had done in the Billow Academy during this period of time? Bullied? Come on, you're the one who's been bullying others. I've asked you to come here today to tell you something. Elder Qing was silent for a while. Suddenly, he looked serious and said, Make as much trouble as you can. Ah? Jiang Qin was stunned. He was dumbfounded. At this moment, Jiang Qin didn't know if Elder Qing was speaking out of anger or the truth. Jiang Qin also felt that he had gone overboard during this period of time. However, he couldn't be blamed for that. Those people were so blind that they had to pick on him. I'm asking you to make as much trouble as you can. The bigger the trouble, the better. Elder Qing said seriously. As long as you don't do anything that's too out of line, I can take it for you. Jiang Qin was dumbfounded when he heard that. The Billow Academy had strict rules. One's cultivation could be crippled easily. You still want me to make trouble? Then, Elder Qing, what are you trying to do? If you want to be protected by the Billow Academy, you have to listen to me and make as much trouble as you can. Elder Qing said, Anyway, there are people who will find trouble with you. You can do whatever you want. Oh, really? Jiang Qin raised his eyebrows and asked, But why is that? After saying that, without waiting for Elder Qing and Lan Sui to speak, Jiang Qin continued, Elder Qing, you know that I don't like to cause trouble, and I don't like to kill. What I like the most is to live a peaceful and low-key life. Stop. Lan Sui could not take it anymore. He waved his hand and said, Do you believe what you just said? This time, it was Jiang Chun who was speechless. Not to mention, even Jiang Chun himself didn't believe what he said before. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was still lacking with Jiang Chen's character, he would have already flown into the sky and burrowed into the ground to look for trouble. The Billow Academy is going to be reshuffled. If I win, the Billow Academy will be able to protect you. If I lose, the Billowing Wave Academy will be reshuffled. At that time, the Billowing Wave Academy won't be able to protect you. Elder Qing said, I'm letting you do whatever you want. This is not only for my sake, but also for yours. When Jiang Chun heard that, his expression involuntarily became solemn. If what Elder Qing said was true, then there would be a lot of trouble in the future. However, Jiang Chun had already entered the middle house and the lower house. The rules of the lower house's discipline hall were much stricter than the outer houses. The outer house used a broken cultivation formation to punish disciples, but the lower house used an extreme attack formation. The two formations were not on the same level at all. At least with Jiang Chen's current strength, he could only block 60% of the extreme attack formation's power if he did not use any special means. Any higher, and Jiang Chun would be in danger. It was precisely because of this that Jiang Chun was more well-behaved after entering the middle house and the lower house. I know what you're worried about, Lan Sui said. Don't worry. The extreme attack formation's power can be raised to 80% at most. As long as you're confident that you can block 80% of the extreme attack formation's power, you can do whatever you want in the lower house. That is a little difficult, Jiang Chun said with a bitter smile. I have to step into the middle honorable realm to be able to block 80% of the extreme attack formation's power. However, as soon as Jiang Chun finished speaking, Elder Qing took out a black pearl and handed it to Jiang Chun. This is the protective pearl. With this, you can block 100% of the extreme attack formation's power, let alone 80%, Elder Qing said with a smile. Now, can you rest assured? All right, leave it to me. At this moment, Jiang Chun was completely relaxed. With the protective pearl and his own strength, Jiang Chun really did not care about 100% of the extreme attack formation's power. After that, after chatting with Elder Qing for a while, Jiang Chun returned to his cave abode. That's right, he was in front of his cave abode, not inside it. This was because when Jiang Chun fell from the sky during the heavenly tribulation, his powerful physical body had destroyed his cave abode. Now, Jiang Chun was in the state of homeless. I can only borrow other people's cave abodes, Jiang Chun muttered. The cave abodes of the lower house disciples were all next to each other. Jiang Chun looked around and quickly found a target. It was a cave abode more than 10 meters away from him, and it was the cave abode of a Martial Pavilion disciple. This cave abode is mine from now on. After a few breaths, Jiang Chun pushed open the door of the cave abode and walked in calmly. The young man who was cultivating in the cave abode saw Jiang Chun, and his face fell. Don't you have your own cave abode? Why are you here to steal mine? The young man said in a low voice. I'll trade with you, Jiang Chun said with a smile. Why? Don't you agree? The young man opened his mouth, but when he saw the golden sand-like power of heaven and earth on Jiang Chun's body, he immediately shut his mouth. He walked out of the cave with a gloomy face, looking aggrieved and depressed. Just you wait. Stealing other people's cave abodes is against the rules of the Billow Academy. Just you wait to go to the disciplinary hall. After a few breaths, the young man's cold voice came from outside the cave abode. Jiang Chun sneered. He stood up and walked towards the disciplinary hall. Since the young man wanted to go to the disciplinary hall to complain, Jiang Chun felt that he should go there himself to save himself the trouble. After a few breaths, when Jiang Chun arrived at the disciplinary hall of the lower house, he saw the deacon walking out of the disciplinary hall. It seemed that he was looking for Jiang Chun. Jiang Chun, are you used to being arrogant in the outer house? You just entered the lower house, and you're already breaking the rules? The deacon shouted angrily. You know the rules, right? Go in yourself and suffer the pain of the extreme attack array. I know, Zhang Chen said with a smile. When the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, he gave off an evil and confident feeling. Then, Zhang Chen stepped into the disciplinary hall, and the extreme attack array rose. After that, there was no more after that. After the extreme attack array rose and fell, Zhang Chen came out. As for his injuries, sorry, nothing happened to him. By the way, is there a better cave abode in the lower house? After walking out of the disciplinary hall, Zhang Chen looked at the deacon and asked with a serious face. Of course there is. The cave abodes of the top 20 disciples in the lower house are much better than the ordinary ones. The deacon explained, the cave abodes of the top 10 disciples are even better. Oh then, Zhang Chen said with a smile, wait for me. I'll be right there. Ah? The deacon was confused. What did he mean by wait for him? However, after half an hour, the deacon understood. Chapter 243. After half an hour, the 13th ranked disciple came to the disciplinary hall to complain that Zhang Chen had stolen his cave abode. Not long after, in less than 3 breaths' time, the 12th ranked disciple of the lower house came to complain. As for what he was complaining about, of course, it was because Zhang Chen had stolen his cave abode. This troublemaker. At this moment, the deacon was furious. Within a day, Zhang Chen had made 3 mistakes in a row. It could be said that he had made one mistake after another. An 80% power extreme attack array. Go in yourself? The deacon's face was gloomy. He happened to see Zhang Chen striding towards the disciplinary hall. Got it? Zhang Chen nodded. He glanced at the 2 youths and said with a look of disdain, I thought the cave abodes in the top 20 would be good. It's not like that. What a waste of my feelings. You'll have to survive the 80% power extreme attack array first. Don't worry. If you can't survive it, I'll collect your corpse. The 2 youths were furious, and their eyes were even flashing with murderous intent. Not only had their cave abodes been stolen by Zhang Chen, but they were also from the Martial Pavilion. The relationship between the Martial Pavilion and Zhang Chen went without saying. An 80% power extreme attack array was equivalent to death in the eyes of an ordinary person. However, Zhang Chen walked over with a smile. After entering the disciplinary hall, he stood in the 80% power extreme attack array. After 10 breaths, when Zhang Chen walked out of the extreme attack array unscathed, the group of people was completely dumbfounded. They all knew that the outer yard's broken array could not do anything to Zhang Chen. However, they did not know that the middle and lower yard's extreme attack arrays could not do anything to Zhang Chen either. The cave abodes in the top 10 should be better, right? Zhang Chen said softly. He ignored the deacon and the 2 youths and walked towards the cave abode. Not long after, the sound of fighting could be heard from the cave abode. When everyone rushed over, they realized that the battle was already over. In front of a majestic cave, a young man was lying on the ground, covered in blood. He was screaming in pain, and his life force was extremely weak. He had almost died. What? Even the one ranked 10th was beaten up? This guy is so fierce. Their mouths and tongues were dry, and they couldn't even speak fluently. It should be known that the Billow Academy was ranked 2nd among the 10 great academies. Even if it was a lower court disciple, his strength was not something that the inner court disciples of other academies could compare with. However, someone had witnessed this battle. The 10th ranked disciple was like a weakling in front of Zhang Chen, who defeated him with just 2 punches. What's the difference between the top 10 caves? At this point, Zhang Chen emerged from the young man's immortal's cave, frowning in disdain. He went to take a look at the situation inside the cave and found that it was not as ideal as he had imagined. In fact, the spirit gathering array in the cave abode was similar to the spirit gathering array in the top 20 caves. The top 3 caves are the best in the lower court. They have the strongest spirit gathering array, alchemy furnace, precious herbs, and even a spirit spring that can cleanse one's marrow and bones. Someone said, "Yes, yes, yes. The top 3 cave abodes will definitely satisfy you." However, the people who occupy the top 3 cave abodes are all ruthless people. With your strength, TSK, 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 I'm afraid it won't work. Some people who didn't mind blowing things up said one after another. Not only were they mocking and disdainful, but they were also filled with anticipation and curiosity. They wanted to see how strong Jiang Chun was. More importantly, they wanted to see how Jiang Chun would be defeated by the top 3 disciples of the lower court. Top 3, right? Sure, Jiang Chun said softly and walked toward the back of the cave abodes. There were many cave abodes in the lower court, and they were continuous. At the back of the cave abodes, there were 3 cave abodes that formed a triangle. The cave abode on the left was the third, the one on the right was the second, and the one in the middle was the first. It was the best cave abode in the middle court and the lower court. There was a spirit spring in each of the 3 cave abodes. Not only was it helpful for cultivation, it could also cleanse one's marrow and bones, condense one's essence, qi, and spirit, and replenish one's blood essence. However, for the past 3 years, the 3 cave abodes had been occupied by the top 3 disciples of the middle court and lower court, and they had never been replaced. He really went there? That's how bold. He dares to go there? Those are the top 3 ruthless people of the lower court. As far as I know, if it weren't for the spirit spring in the cave abodes, those 3 people would have been promoted to the inner court, or even the earth court. Many people were discussing. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "He went to the first cave abode." At this moment, everyone was staring at Jiang Chun with their eyes wide open. They could only watch helplessly as Jiang Chun barged into the first abode. Bang! Bang! After a few breaths, the door of the cave abode was opened, and a young man covered in blood was thrown out of the cave abode. When everyone saw this, they were immediately speechless. They were even more shocked in their hearts. The person who occupied the first cave abode was naturally the strongest disciple of the lower court. However, he was covered in injuries and even fainted. At the same time, some people thought of one thing, and that was the battle between Jiang Chun and Xiao Qingyi 3 days later. Xiao Qingyi is in trouble. Xiao Qingyi is only ranked 11th. Many people smiled bitterly in their hearts and felt sorry for Xiao Qingyi. After all, Jiang Chun even suppressed the number 1 disciple of the lower court. Xiao Qingyi, who was ranked 11th, would be brutally beaten up by Jiang Chun. At this moment, the deacon of the lower court walked over and stood outside the cave abode. He yelled angrily, "You violated the rules consecutively. You'll be punished in the extreme attack array with 100% power." Got it? Jiang Chun's voice came from inside the cave abode. Then, everyone saw Jiang Chun rush out and go straight to the discipline hall. Half an hour later, Jiang Chun walked out of the discipline hall and scathed with a faint smile on his face. Jiang Chun's strong physical body, rich power of heaven and earth, and the body-protecting pearl that Elder Qing gave him allowed him to pass through the extreme attack array's punishment easily. Before he left, Jiang Chun looked at the deacon mockingly and said, "According to the rules, the extreme attack array's power can only be increased to 80% at most. What I just endured was the extreme attack array with 100% power. Is this considered abusing the law?" Hearing this, the deacon's face turned pale instantly. He knew better than anyone else that as a deacon, if he abused the law, he would be severely punished. He might even be crippled of his cultivation and be expelled from the Billow Academy. Lin Tao, for abusing the law, you'll be crippled of your cultivation and expelled from the Billow Academy. At this moment, Lan Sui suddenly appeared. After he spoke, he pointed his finger and crippled Deacon Lin Tao. Then, he waved his hand and threw Deacon Lin Tao out of the Billow Academy. Hiss! Dean Lan Sui of the inner court? Why did he come to the lower court? This is getting out of hand. Dean Lan Sui did it himself? That's not appropriate, right? Many people around them gasped and observed a moment of silence for Lin Tao. At the same time, some people also felt that a storm seemed to be brewing in the Billow Academy. Otherwise, Why would the dean of the inner court interfere in the middle court and lower court matters? Chapter 244. After Lan Sui executed Lin Tao, he didn't say much. He didn't even look at Jiang Chun as he flew away. As for Jiang Chun, he hurriedly returned to the first cave abode. Once he entered the cave abode, Jiang Chun set up a formation and enchantment both inside and outside the cave abode. He even engraved restrictions. Then, he came to the depths of the cave abode in front of a spirit spring. Misty spirit spring. At this moment, Jiang Chun was smiling. His eyes were shining with excitement and surprise. This was because when he seized this cave abode, Jiang Chun did not expect that the spirit spring in this cave abode was actually one of the top 10 spirit springs, the Misty Spirit Spring. There were hundreds of types of spirit springs in the world. However, there were 10 types of spirit springs that were extraordinary and were known as the Holy Spirit Spring. Among them, there was this Misty Spirit Spring. However, this Misty Spirit Spring should have been formed postnatally. Otherwise, how could this spirit spring be placed in the middle and lower courtyards? The effects of the Misty Spirit Spring were even more shocking. Cleansing the marrow and bones, condensing the essence, energy, and spirit, and replenishing the essence and blood. These were the basic effects. The most important thing was that the Misty Spirit Spring could stabilize one's foundation. Not to mention ordinary people. Even Jiang Chun did not dare to say that his foundation was perfect. Just like how no one was perfect, there were also mistakes and flaws in cultivation. Although Jiang Chun had achieved perfection in each of his states, he still hadn't achieved perfection. However, this did not mean that Jiang Chun's foundation was perfect, and the foundation was especially important to cultivators. Some disciples of top sects and families would constantly repair and stabilize their foundation in the process of cultivation. Only with a stable foundation could one's cultivation in the future be smoother and cultivate to a higher realm. As for those with a stable foundation, they would not encounter any bottlenecks in their cultivation journey at all. At the same time, their combat power would be much higher than ordinary people in the same realm. At this moment, Jiang Chun was a little confused. According to what he knew, the Misty Spirit Spring could only be formed postnatally and not postnatally. Then, what was up with this Misty Spirit Spring in front of him? Did someone use a great method or divine ability to turn this Misty Spirit Spring into a Misty Spirit Spring? Or perhaps there was something special about the Misty Spirit Spring? Let's go down and take a look. Thinking of this, Jiang Chun took off his clothes and jumped into the Spirit Spring. The Spirit Spring was very deep, reaching 30 meters underground. However, it was neither big nor wide. It was like an enlarged well. Jiang Chun dived all the way down, but he didn't see anything strange. However, when he reached the bottom of the Spirit Spring and saw the crack on the ground, Jiang Chun's expression changed. At the bottom of the Spirit Spring, there was no mud. Instead, there was a green stone slab. There was a crack on the blue stone slab, and within the crack, divine light flickered. The divine light condensed and did not disperse. It flowed on the blue stone floor, constantly changing its shape. Sometimes he was like a dragon, sometimes he was like a phoenix, and sometimes he was like a Qilin or a Taodai. 10,000 demon stone? Jiang Chun exclaimed. This kind of thing was extremely rare in the ninth heaven divine realm. One had to know that the 10,000 demon stone required the fusion of dozens of divine beast blood essences to form. Of course, there were also some 10,000 demon stones that were nurtured by heaven and earth. They were heavenly treasures and belonged to the Ka treasure. And this 10,000 demon stone in front of him was clearly nurtured by heaven and earth. It was also under the nourishment of this 10,000 demon stone that this spirit spring underwent a mutation and became a Misty Spirit Spring. Not completely formed yet, Jiang Chun said softly. Carefully sizing up the 10,000 demon stone, he discovered that the divine light that it spat out was still constantly changing its shape. This meant that the 10,000 demon stone had not completely matured yet. And once the 10,000 demon stone was formed, it would shed its stone form and transform into a living being. As for what kind of living being the 10,000 demon stone would transform into, that was heaven's will. In ancient times, there was a dragon that fought against the heavens and ruled over 10,000 demons. Primal chaos turned into a green lotus, hiding in its eyes. It was called the green-eyed azure dragon. Jiang Chun said softly. Suddenly, a bold idea appeared in his heart. After the 10,000 demon stone was formed, the living being it transformed into was random. But Jiang Chun wanted to interfere with it. He wanted it to transform into the living being he wanted. As for Jiang Chun, he had countless mounts in the past. The only mount he lacked was the king of 10,000 demons, the green-eyed azure dragon. In a distant era, a green-eyed azure dragon once appeared and ruled over 10,000 races. Even the human race submitted to the green-eyed azure dragon. However, for some reason, the green-eyed azure dragon suddenly disappeared at a certain time. It was also from then on that the 10,000 races stood side by side, and the various races rose to prominence, having the opportunity to shine. Otherwise, all living beings in the world would probably still be ruled by the green-eyed azure dragon until now. And what Jiang Chun wanted was the green-eyed azure dragon. The 10,000 demon stone has spirituality. If I let it know what the green-eyed azure dragon looks like and what kind of power it uses, perhaps the 10,000 demon stone can really transform into the green-eyed azure dragon when it is formed. Jiang Chun thought, although he knew that the possibility was very small and could almost be ignored. However, how would he know if he did not try? Half an hour later, Jiang Chun used the power of heaven and earth to carve an azure dragon on the green stone slab. The dragon's body was like a 5-clawed golden dragon, but its entire body was snow white. In the middle of its brows, there was a vertical eye. It was green in color, and the pupil contained a green lotus. The dragon's horn spiraled up like the roots of an old tree, emitting a layer of fluorescent light. It was still white. The eyes were like the eyes of a bull. The whites of the eyes were green, and the pupils were black. In the depths of the pupils, there seemed to be a door hidden, and this dragon was the green-eyed azure dragon. Good boy, if it takes shape in the future, it will become like this. Daddy loves you. Jiang Chun touched the 10,000 demon stone, then remembered something and hurriedly left this place. After a few breaths, Jiang Chun rushed out of the spirit spring. Before he could react, he heard a scream. Ah, you're not wearing clothes? Accompanied by the scream, Jiang Chun was stunned on the spot. Then he raised his head and looked in front. In front of the spirit spring, there was a slim and graceful woman. Her hair was draped over her shoulders, and she wore a tight-fitting dress. Not only did it show off her slender figure vividly, but it also revealed her perfect collarbone. As for her appearance, it was naturally top-notch, as if it was carved out by a heavenly craftsman. There was not a single blemish on her entire face. Damn hooligan, you're not wearing clothes in broad daylight. You, shameless. The woman's face was red. She covered her eyes with both hands and stomped her feet in anger. I'm bathing in the spirit spring in my own cave abode. Why do I have to wear clothes? Jiang Chun said mockingly. You, on the other hand, barged into my cave abode without my permission. This is against the rules of Billowing Waves Academy. What are the rules? The rules are set by my grandfather. The woman said angrily. Hurry up and put on your clothes. Why are you looking for me? Jiang Chun asked while putting on his clothes. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. This woman was really beautiful and could be called perfect. Grandfather asked me to protect you. The woman said, my name is Qing Kong Xinyue. You should know my grandfather. Others call him Ancestor Qing. Chapter 245. Jiang Chun was surprised by Qing Kong Xuanyue's sudden appearance. At the same time, Jiang Chun was even more confused. Who was this Ancestor Qing that Qing Kong Xinyue was talking about? I only know Elder Qing. I've never heard of Ancestor Qing. Jiang Chun shook his head. You've never heard of Ancestor Qing? Qing Kong Xinyue was stunned. Who in the entire Billow Academy didn't know about Ancestor Qing? That was the pillar of the Billowing Waves Academy, the Grand Elder, and the previous dean. Although Ancestor Ching was in seclusion most of the time and didn't care about the Billow Academy's matters, everyone in the Billow Academy knew about this extremely powerful Ancestor Ching. As for Ancestor Ching, he was the ancestor of the Qing Kong clan and the father of Qing Kong the First. As for Qing Kong Xianyue, she was Ancestor Qing's granddaughter and Qing Kong the first daughter. So what if I've never heard of him? Jiang Chun pursed his lips. Do I need a woman like you to protect me in the middle school? Grandpa said that you're too weak. In order to ensure your safety, I have to protect you. Qing Kong Xianyue frowned and sighed reluctantly. Who's willing to protect a pervert like you? Humph. Jiang Chun blinked and pointed at himself. Who's the pervert? You're the one who saw my body. Logically speaking, you're the pervert, the female pervert. Bang! As soon as he said that, Jiang Chun saw Qing Kong Xuanyue's palm strike. This palm strike was like a piece of white jade that shone with the color of glass. It landed on Jiang Chun's body. With Jiang Chun's strength, he naturally wasn't afraid. He didn't even think about defending himself. After all, with his physical body and the rich power of heaven and earth in his body, ordinary people couldn't hurt him at all. However, when this palm landed on Jiang Chun's body, Jiang Chun was stunned. He was like a kite with a broken string as he flew backward. Blood even spurted out from his mouth and nose. Furthermore, there was a berserk aura within that palm that rushed into his limbs and bones. It was as if a wild dragon was dancing within his body. If it weren't for Jiang Chun's solid foundation, this palm strike would have been enough to take his life. The F*CK, an Earth Realm Berserker? Jiang Chun was dumbfounded. He stood up from the ground, wiped the blood from his mouth and nose, and shivered all over. In Jiang Chun's eyes, only men could become berserkers. After all, if a man's temper was more violent, it was very easy for his body to give birth to berserk blood. But who would have thought that such a beautiful woman, who looked so delicate and weak, was actually a berserker? Watch your words next time, or else I'll suppress you, Qing Kong Xianyue said coldly. If you continue to talk nonsense and ruin my reputation, I'll slap you to death. Oh, I won't do it again. Jiang Chun admitted defeat on the spot. Because Jiang Chun could see that Qing Kong Xianyue was very strong. She was a top prodigy. This kind of person's cultivation was much higher than his. She was also a berserker and a member of the Qing Kong tribe. Jiang Chun could naturally guess how deep her foundation was. Then, why don't I just admit defeat? Of course, if they were to fight to the death, even 10 Qing Kong Xianyue would not be a match for Jiang Chun. But that was not necessary. I'll stay here from now on to protect your safety at all times. Qing Kong Xianyue sighed, her face full of sorrow. I'm still a virgin, but I have to stay in the same room with a pervert like you. Won't my reputation be ruined just like that? Come on, I'm worried about my reputation. Jiang Chun thought to himself. He felt that his future days would not be easy. An Earth Realm Berserker to protect me? Big sister, I'm afraid that before I get killed, I'll be crippled by you first. Miss Xinyu, I have a favor to ask of you. Jiang Chun suddenly smiled. Licking his lips, he said, Is there any ancient book about the blue-eyed azure dragon in the Billow Institute's depository pavilion? Of course. The Surge Academy has been established for a long time and has a deep foundation. There are all kinds of ancient books in the scripture pavilion. Qing Kong Xianyue said, Why do you want the ancient books of the blue-eyed azure dragon? That's a taboo ancient book. Normal people are not allowed to see it. The blue-eyed azure dragon had united all the races and even suppressed the human race. Therefore, in the eyes of the human race, the blue-eyed azure dragon was an evil dragon. Now, anything related to the blue-eyed azure dragon was considered taboo. I'm just curious and want to see it. Can you help me get it? Jiang Chun said, Sure. Qing Kong Xianyue nodded. Grandpa said that as long as it's not too overboard, I'll satisfy you. Finished talking, Qing Kong Xianyue turned around and left. But when she walked to the cave abode's entrance, she suddenly stopped and said in a cold voice, Grandpa also told me to pass on to you. Don't play any tricks. Some things can't be monopolized. When Jiang Chun heard that, he could not help being stunned for a moment. His heart immediately twitched fiercely. Qin Kong Xuanyue's words were already very clear. She wanted him to hand over the Grand Supreme incantation. Although Jiang Chun was 100 times unwilling in his heart, thinking carefully, if not for Elder Qing's emotion for getting incantation, he would not be able to obtain the Grand Supreme incantation either. Since that was the case, sharing was also right. Moreover, Elder Qing was considered his greatest protective umbrella now. Take it. Jiang Chun waved his hand. A mystic light landed in front of Qin Kong Xianyue. This was a memory related to the Grand Supreme incantation. Tell Elder Qing that although the Grand Supreme incantation is fused, it's very difficult to cultivate. I haven't comprehended a bit until now. Jiang Qin smiled bitterly and said, don't force yourself to cultivate it. Some things can't be forced, or the gains won't make up for the losses. Okay. Qin Kong Xianyue nodded and left. Half an hour later, Qin Kong Xianyue returned to the cave abode with a dusty ancient book that had been sealed for a long time. Thank you. Jiang Chun took the ancient book and blushed. He said, I'm going to soak in the spiritual spring. Can you leave me for a while? Scram. Qin Kong Xuanyue's pretty face also turned red. She turned her head and sat down cross-legged on the other side of the cave abode. Jiang Chun did not say much. After taking off his clothes, he plunged into the spiritual spring with the ancient book. After a dozen breaths, Jiang Chun placed the ancient book about the blue eyes green dragon on the 1,000-demon stone. Little stone, I've carved the appearance of the blue eyes green dragon for you. The abilities of the blue eyes green dragon and some other things are also recorded in this ancient book. If you have a spirit, read more of this ancient book. When you take shape in the future, it's best if you can transform into a blue eyes green dragon. At that time, you'll be the leader of all living things in this world. Jiang Chun was like a kind father, and he was teaching it earnestly, but it was unknown whether the myriad demon stone could understand him. Then, Jiang Chun sat cross-legged on the blue stone and began to cultivate. In the Empyrean realm, Jiang Chun cultivated the 6 directions incantation. The 6 directions incantation required cultivating 2 spiritual souls and 4 physical souls. For every spiritual soul cultivated, he would have to undergo 2 heavenly tribulations. For every physical soul cultivated, he would have to undergo 3 heavenly tribulations. In this way, Jiang Chun would have to polish his essence, energy, and spirit, as well as his bones and flesh. He did not want to die under the heavenly tribulations before cultivating the 6 directions incantation. Chapter 246. The dense spirit spring contained a lot of spiritual power and many special powers. These powers could help people cleanse their bones and condense their essence, energy, and spirit. At this moment, Jiang Chun sat cross-legged in meditation, condensing his essence, energy, and spirit, cleansing his bones. His body was covered in a layer of divine light, and every pore was open, swallowing and spitting out multicolored light. There even seemed to be a Buddha sitting cross-legged in some of his pores, chanting ancient and obscure scriptures. This was the embodiment of an extremely strong physical body. At the same time, Jiang Chun's spiritual power was also slowly strengthening. In his mind, in the void space, his spiritual power was like a dragon, illuminating his entire mind. Time passed slowly as he cultivated. 3 days later, Qin Kong Xuanyue's voice came from outside the spirit spring. Hey, are you drowning? What? Jiang Chun looked up and felt the changes in his body first. Both his physical body and spiritual power had improved slightly. However, the effect wasn't very big. After all, cultivation had to be done gradually. It couldn't be done overnight. There's someone called Xiao Qingyi waiting for you in the life and death arena, Qin Kong Xianyue said. Do you want me to help you get rid of him? Xiao Qingyi? Jiang Chun was stunned for a moment. After a while, he remembered that there seemed to be a person called Xiao Qingyi who had a battle with him in 3 days. Elder Qing wants me to make a big deal out of this, Jiang Chun muttered. If not for this, Jiang Chun wouldn't have bothered with this battle. After all, Even the person ranked first in the lower house was defeated by him. Xiao Qingyi, who was ranked 11th, was nothing. With that thought, Jiang Chun could only get up and rush out of the spirit spring. Then, he appeared naked in front of Qin Kong Xianyue again. Hooligan! Qin Kong Xianyue was furious and hit Jiang Chun with her palm. Jiang Chun flew out, bleeding from his mouth and nose. He looked even more innocent. I say, you know that I'm naked after soaking in the spirit spring. Why are you still standing here? Are you blaming me? It's not your fault, but mine. Qin Kong Xianyue glared and warned. Next time, wear your clothes and soak in the spirit spring. Otherwise, I'll slap you to death. You are really unreasonable. Jiang Chun was speechless. He silently wiped away the tears in his heart, then put on his clothes and went to the arena of life and death in the lower courtyard. Every courtyard had its own arena of life and death. The life and death arena of the lower house was in the square. At this moment, there were only a few people around. There were even some people who knew that there was going to be a life and death battle today, but they didn't come to watch. One had to know that under normal circumstances, life and death battles were extremely rare. Every time a life and death battle occurred, it would attract all the disciples. However, this life and death battle was different. This was because all the disciples in the lower house knew that Jiang Chun had beaten up the person who was ranked first. In that case, what was there to see in the battle between Jiang Chun and Xiao Qingyi, who was ranked 11th? Some people even teased that they wanted to find a place with good feng shui for Xiao Qingyi so that they could bury him properly. You're Jiang Chun? At this moment, Xiao Qingyi stood proudly in the arena. His expression was arrogant, and his entire body exuded an aura of death. He was a necromancer, an upper-level exalt necromancer. Xiao Qingyi's strength had improved greatly when he was training outside. This time, he wanted to get rid of Jiang Chun first before fighting for the title of first in the lower house. However, he didn't know that the first person in the lower house had already been beaten up by Jiang Chun, and his cave abode had been snatched away. Let's start. Jiang Chun walked up to the arena and waved at Xiao Qingyi. I don't want to waste my breath on the people from the martial pavilion. I don't want to waste my breath on someone who's about to die either. Xiao Qingyi said coldly, his eyes flashing with contempt. Buzz! As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Qingyi formed a series of hand seals with his hands and then suddenly slammed them on the ground. Necromancer's spiritual art, soul return, accompanied by a loud shout. A black fog curled up from the ground. It was as if a gate to hell had been opened in the black fog, and waves of chilly wind howled. In the blink of an eye, skeletons walked out of the black fog one after another. These skeletons were completely golden and exuded the aura of upper-level Exalt Realm. Not bad. Upper-level Exalt Realm. You can summon 3 undead generals at once. Jiang Chun nodded and chuckled. Unfortunately, you're about to become one of them. Your name will be in my undead army from now on, Xiao Qingyi said coldly. Really? Then your name will be in my undead army too, Jiang Chun said mockingly. He formed a seal with his hands and suddenly slammed them on the ground. Necromancer's spiritual art, 6 ghost gates. With a soft shout, black fog exploded in front of Jiang Chun, and 6 gloomy and terrifying gates appeared out of thin air. Then, 6 figures walked out of the gates. These 6 figures were filled with the aura of death, but they weren't skeletons. Instead, they had flesh and blood. Moreover, the auras of these 6 undead spirits had reached the lower level of Earth Realm. What? You're also a necromancer? Xiao Qingyi exclaimed and looked at the 6 gates in horror. The lost martial technique, 6 sly art? A lost martial technique? Jiang Chun was stunned. He had just casually used this martial technique. In Jiang Chun's memory, there was a necromancer martial technique that was even stronger than the 6 sly art. Impossible! The 6 ghost gates have already been destroyed, and the 6 sly art was lost 1,000 years ago. Where did you get it? Xiao Qingyi said in a low voice as a different emotion flashed across his eyes. The 6 ghost gates have been destroyed, Jiang Chun said in surprise. Back then, Before Jiangchen became a god, the 6 ghost gates had already existed. This sect was extremely powerful, and an unparalleled powerhouse had even appeared to compete with Jiangchen. At that time, Jiangchen also narrowly escaped death to defeat the other party. In Jiangchen's eyes, the 6 ghost gates should still exist. In terms of foundation, it might not be weaker than the Martial Pavilion. However, he didn't expect such a powerful sect to be destroyed. The world has changed. It was prosperous for a time, but it was destroyed overnight. Jiangchen sighed. Then he asked in confusion, "Who destroyed the 6 ghost gates?" "I don't know." Xiao Qingyi shook his head with a strange expression. "Can we not fight this battle?" "Why?" Jiangchen frowned. "Do you think we can stop a life-and-death battle just because you say so? Moreover, you know my relationship with the Martial Pavilion. I won't kill anyone from the Martial Pavilion, but I can't let them go. I'm no match for you," Xiao Qingyi said directly. Then he said telepathically, "I'm the last disciple of the 6 ghost gates. If I die, the 6 ghost gates will be completely destroyed. Maybe I'm weak, but I don't want the 6 ghost gates to be destroyed in my hands," Xiao Qingyi said telepathically. "Since you've mastered the 6 sly art, then I'm definitely no match for you. Here, I beg you to let me go." Chapter 247. Xiao Qingyi went from being arrogant at the beginning to begging for mercy. This change caught Jiangchen off guard. However, when he heard Xiao Qingyi's identity, Jiangchen's heart couldn't help but ripple. Back then, Jiangchen dominated the godless continent and fought with a group of prodigies and monsters. Among them were people from the 6 gates of hell. At that time, Jiangchen won, but didn't kill the other party. Instead, they became friends because of the battle and became sworn friends. Jiangchen once promised that person that he would protect the 6 gates of hell and make them prosperous. However, no one expected that after Jiangchen became a god, the 6 gates of hell were actually destroyed. "Old man, I once promised you that I would protect the 6 gates of hell." Jiangchen sighed in his heart. "The world has changed. The sea of clouds is no longer there. When I was reborn, you were already gone. Even the 6 gates of hell were gone." Jiangchen sighed inwardly, but a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He waved his hand and removed the 6 gates of hell. He then said to Xiao Qingyi, "Leave the Martial Pavilion and follow me from now on. I'll teach you all the inherited spells of the 6 gates of hell." "Leave the Martial Pavilion?" Xiao Qingyi frowned, looking a bit troubled. Xiao Qingyi didn't join the Martial Pavilion to work for it, but to protect himself. He was the last successor of the 6 gates of hell, so he joined the Martial Pavilion to find a backer and protect himself. Now, leaving the Martial Pavilion wasn't a big deal. However, the key was that if he left the Martial Pavilion and followed Jiangchen, who was the enemy of the Martial Pavilion, what would happen to Xiao Qingyi's safety then? The 6 gates of hell were destroyed. The inheritance is incomplete, right? Jiangchen asked, but he knew. Otherwise, as the last successor of the 6 gates of hell, how could Xiao Qingyi not know the 6 paths crafty arts? Now, Jiangchen was willing to let Xiao Qingyi go and give him a chance to obtain the complete inheritance of the 6 gates of hell. And this chance required Xiao Qingyi to exchange his life for it. Following Jiangchen meant going against the Martial Pavilion. Going against the Martial Pavilion meant that for a long time in the future, Xiao Qingyi and Jiangchen would be walking on the edge of a cliff. The slightest carelessness could lead to death. Jiangchen didn't say much. He looked at Xiao Qingyi and waited for his answer. "Do you really have the inheritance of the 6 gates of hell?" Xiao Qingyi asked after a moment of silence. He didn't seem to believe Jiangchen's words. After all, even he, the true successor, did not have a complete inheritance. How could Jiangchen, an outsider, possess it? "Believe it or not, it's up to you." Jiangchen raised his eyebrows. "The opportunity is right in front of you. Do you want to gamble with your life? Or do you want to wallow like this for the rest of your life? The 6 gates of hell still have you as their successor, so they are not completely destroyed. Don't you want to rebuild the 6 gates of hell?" Jiangchen asked. Xiao Qingyi said bluntly, without thinking, My life's goal is to rebuild the six gates of hell and let the glory of the six gates of hell reappear on the godless continent. But when he said this, Xiao Qingyi's expression was a bit dejected and helpless. He didn't even have a complete inheritance, and he even needed to rely on the martial pavilion to protect himself. If this continued, how could he rebuild the six gates of hell and recreate the glory of the six gates of hell? Take it. At this moment, Jiang Chun flicked his finger. Using the power of heaven and earth as a guide, he threw the six paths crafty art in front of Xiao Qingyi. The silk book formed by the power of heaven and earth flashed with divine light. Wisps of dead spirit qi filled the air. The six paths crafty art is not the complete inheritance of the six gates of hell, Jiang Chun said. If you believe me, follow me. As long as I'm alive, I won't let you die. What if you die? Xiao Qingyi asked. If I die, you won't be able to live either. Jiang Chun pursed his lips. If you follow me, you'll be going against the martial pavilion. If I die, the martial pavilion won't let you go. Then, Xiao Qingyi frowned. The light in his eyes gradually brightened and flickered. Finally, he said seriously, if you're not lying to me, I'll use my life as a guide to follow you. Then, Xiao Qingyi didn't stand on ceremony. After putting away the silk book, he turned and walked down the life and death arena. Jiang Chun didn't say much. He smiled faintly and looked up at the sky, recalling everything that happened in the past. In that glorious era, Jiang Chun fought against a group of heroes alone. He killed his way out of tens of thousands of people and finally unified the godless continent. During that time, there were sadness and joy. There were unforgettable experiences and things that he didn't want to remember. The sky hasn't changed, and the earth hasn't collapsed. Old man, I won't change what I promised you. Jiang Chun thought. The six gates of hell will revive together with the Chuanzuan sect. Return to glory. Hey, are you done fighting? It's time to go back and cultivate. Just as Jiang Chun was lamenting, Qingkong Xianyue appeared beside the arena. She rolled her eyes and said in annoyance, Your cultivation is so weak, but you still want to learn from others and fight in the life and death arena? Why aren't you going to cultivate? Oh, okay. Jiang Chun nodded weakly. Then he followed behind Qingkong Xianyue and returned to his cave abode. Then, Jiang Chun continued to cultivate. During this time, Xiao Qingyi didn't come to find Jiang Chun. It was most likely that he was comprehending and cultivating the arcane six paths. At the same time, in the lower courtyard, people were discussing the previous life and death battle. No one expected that not only did the two sides not fight in the life and death arena, but it also ended with Xiao Qingyi leaving the martial pavilion. Moreover, on that day, Xiao Qingyi announced that he would follow Jiang Chun from now on. It was also on that day that Xiao Qingyi charged all the way, defeated the second-ranked disciple, and took over his cave abode. Now, his and Jiang Chun's cave abodes could be said to be next to each other. It was also because of this that everyone was very confused. Why did Xiao Qingyi leave the martial pavilion and follow Jiang Chun? However, no one could guess the reason. However, one thing was certain. Xiao Qingyi leaving the martial pavilion caused dissatisfaction among many disciples. In fact, the martial pavilion of the Billow Academy had already said that they wanted to interrogate Xiao Qingyi and punish him. Jiang Chun didn't know any of this, and Xiao Qingyi didn't mention it to Jiang Chun either. Until 10 days later, Jiang Chun came out of seclusion. His entire body was resplendent and flowing with divine light. Today, Jiang Chun planned to transcend the tribulation. My essence, qi, and spirit have all reached the peak. I can transcend the tribulation and cultivate the first Tao soul, Jiang Chun said softly. You only know how to cultivate in seclusion. That little brother you just took in almost died in the martial pavilion. Qingkong Xianyue was in the cave abode. When she saw Jiang Chun come out of the spirit spring, she mocked coldly. Little brother I just took in? Jiang Chun was stunned. He immediately reacted and asked, How is Xiao Qingyi now? 30% of his cultivation was cut off. Now his cultivation has dropped to the lower stage of the exalt realm. His essence, qi, and spirit were all cut off. He probably won't be able to recover for 3 to 5 years, Qin Kong Xinyue said. I really don't understand. In order to follow you, he actually betrayed the martial pavilion. He's lucky that he didn't die. Oh, got it, Jiang Chen said softly. Then, he left the cave abode without saying a word. After leaving the cave abode, Jiang Chen's expression was calm. There was a trace of a smile at the corner of his mouth. He looked unruly. The disciple I just took in was almost crippled by you guys. Jiang Chen thought. Since you gave me such a gift, then it's impolite not to reciprocate. I'll give you guys a big gift too. Chapter 248. Jiang Chun smiled casually, but his heart was burning with rage. He promised Xiao Qingyi that as long as he didn't die, Xiao Qingyi would live. But now, Xiao Qingyi almost died after just 10 days of seclusion. Even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured and might not recover in 3 to 5 years. His cultivation was even severed. Severing one's cultivation was not only a humiliation to a cultivator, but it was also a punishment and torture worse than death. Jiang Chen, what are you doing in my martial pavilion? 10 breaths later, in the martial pavilion in the inner court, Jiang Chen stood at the entrance of the martial pavilion with a smile on his face. He even cupped his hands at the 2 guards and bowed. I'm here to deliver a gift. A gift? If this isn't the Billow Academy, you're here to die. The 2 guards shouted angrily. When they looked at Jiang Chen, their eyes flashed with murderous intent. Jiang Chen ignored them and rose into the air, standing above the martial pavilion. Then he activated the 6 Unity Art and stretched his limbs and bones. He drew in front of him with both hands, and a lightning summoning rune appeared. I'll give you a big gift. Jiang Chen stood in the air and pressed his hand down. The lightning summoning rune instantly exploded. Boom! Following a few explosions, the originally clear sky was instantly filled with dark clouds. Then, the dark clouds condensed and turned into a tribulation cloud. Lightning flashed, and thunder raged in the tribulation cloud. Xiao Qingyi is mine, Jiang Chen said softly. He stood in the air, and a faint figure appeared above his head. It was Jiang Chen's soul, and he was about to transcend the heavenly tribulation. However, Jiang Chen had improved a lot in the 10 days of seclusion. His tribulation this time wasn't that simple. Again, at this moment, Jiang Chen condensed another lightning summoning rune, and the second tribulation cloud appeared. Boom! Boom! After a few breaths, accompanied by the sound of thunder, 2 lightning bolts as thick as buckets fell and drowned Jiang Chen. At the same time, the heavenly tribulation descended and enveloped the entire martial pavilion. All of a sudden, everyone in the martial pavilion was implicated, and their own heavenly tribulations were triggered. At that moment, dozens of tribulation clouds appeared in the sky above the martial pavilion. Thunderbolts crackled as they descended. Jiang Chen, bastard, heavenly tribulation? No, no. Miserable screams and curses could be heard one after another. Even the pavilion lord, who was in charge of the martial pavilion, trembled and cursed in his heart. However, once the heavenly tribulation was involved, it had to be overcome, unless he died. At this moment, the spirit above Jiang Chen's head flickered with divine light. The power of heaven and earth was like a huge bell and a pagoda that protected his entire body. Exuberant blood chi floated around him like a blood cloud. Talismans, formations, and forbidding auras were set up all at once, turning his surroundings into an iron fortress. Allowing countless thunderbolts to descend and strike his body, Jiang Chen was like a boulder, towering and unmoving. With a smile on his face, Jiang Chen looked at the martial pavilion that had already turned into ruins below. The fury in his heart finally subsided gradually. Miserable screams rang in his ears, and the smell of blood filled the air. Someone had died under the heavenly tribulation. The martial pavilion, and I will never rest until one of us dies. In the Billow Academy, if everyone knew their place, I wouldn't have acted like this. Jiang Chen said softly with a smile on his face. This gift is my first big gift to the Martial Pavilion after entering the Billow Academy. Jiang Chun, you're courting death. Don't think that the Martial Pavilion won't dare to kill you just because you've become a disciple of the Billow Academy. If you push us too far, we'll kill you right now. Below, the Martial Pavilion Lord was furious. He had a few armors on him that could block the heavenly tribulation. However, the others were basically all dead. 3 at the upper level of the Exalt Realm, 1 at the lower level of the Earth Realm, 6 at the middle level of the Earth Realm, and 1 at the upper level of the Earth Realm. These people had all died under the heavenly tribulation. Those who weren't dead were about to die. I know you have the ability to kill me, but do you dare? Jiang Chen raised his brows. When you attacked Xiao Qingyi, did you ever think that this day would come? Why wouldn't I dare? At this moment, the Martial Pavilion Lord was also enraged. With the power of wind and thunder, he stared at the thunderbolts in the sky and charged towards Jiang Chun. However, before he could reach him, Lan Sui suddenly appeared not far away with a decree in his hand. He said loudly, Elder Qing announces that he will accept Jiang Chun as an in-name disciple. With just this sentence, the Martial Pavilion Lord's figure stopped the moment he finished speaking. It was because he knew that Elder Qing never accepted disciples. He didn't even have a single honorary disciple. Now that Elder Qing had personally issued a decree to accept Jiang Chun as a disciple, although it was just an in-name disciple, the meaning behind it was intriguing. Moreover, who was Elder Qing? He was the pillar of the Billow Academy. He was the leader of one of the 3 forces in the Billow Academy. Even without mentioning this, just the surname Qing Kong alone was enough to make him wary. Moreover, there was still Ancestor Qing above Elder Qing. That person was someone that even Linlang Wentian would have to be wary of. Jiang Chun, you've destroyed the Martial Pavilion's branch. You've gone too far. At this moment, Lan Sui shouted angrily. After the heavenly tribulation, you'll be punished with confinement. You can't leave the cave abode for 3 days. Oh! Jiang Chen nodded, but his expression was very strange. He had destroyed the Martial Pavilion's branch in the Billow Academy and used the heavenly tribulation to kill so many Martial Pavilion experts. In the end, Lan Sui only punished him with confinement for 3 days. This punishment was equivalent to no punishment. I say, isn't this a little too obvious? Jiang Chen asked through voice transmission. If it's not obvious, how can you make a big deal out of it? Lan Sui replied through voice transmission. Go ahead and make a big deal out of it with the title of Elder Qing's registered disciple. Then, can this person be killed? Jiang Chen asked. Lan Sui was dumbfounded when he heard this. Sir, you've already killed so many people, and you still want to kill him? This is the Pavilion Master of the Martial Pavilion's branch. Are you sure you want to kill him? However, Lan Sui did not have any objections when he thought about making a big deal out of it. He only told Jiang Chun that if he had the ability, he could just kill him. Then, let's kill him, Jiang Chun said softly, and his eyes shone brightly. With a wave of his hand, an obscure aura exploded. In an instant, the armor that was originally on the man's body seemed to have lost its spirituality and flew toward Jiang Chun. Moreover, the armor shattered one by one in the middle of the flight. Without the protection of the armor, the man was shattered and turned into ashes in the face of so many heavenly tribulation thunderbolts. This is the skill of a blacksmith? The art of object control? Lan Sui exclaimed. Although blacksmiths were not rare, blacksmiths who knew the art of object control were few and far between. I've killed him. I'll leave the cleaning up to you and Elder Qing, Jiang Chun said with a smile. After passing the heavenly tribulation, he left and returned to his cave abode to be confined for 3 days. Lan Sui was in a mess, looking at the corpses all over the ground and the Martial Pavilion that had turned into ruins. He felt a headache coming on. His heart was breaking out in cold sweat. He secretly wondered if today's matter was too big. Chapter 249. The Martial Pavilion, Elixir Pavilion, and Array Pavilion all had branches in the godless continent. Just like the Billows Academy, these forces also had branch halls, and they were all located in the inner courtyard. Now, the inner court was in an uproar. Almost everyone was watching the heavenly tribulation from afar. They even witnessed the destruction of the Martial Pavilion's branch. Everyone was guessing what punishment Jiang Chun would receive and whether the Martial Pavilion's headquarters would come to the Billows Academy to denounce them. However, after half an hour, the Billows Academy announced the result and punished Jiang Chun with 3 days of confinement. What? Just 3 days of confinement? Are you kidding me? Aren't they afraid that the Martial Pavilion's headquarters will be unhappy with this kind of punishment? This is too obvious, isn't it? I'm not convinced. For a moment, not to mention the inner court disciples, the entire Billows Academy was in an uproar. Compared to the various courtyards of the Billows Academy that were in an uproar, the back mountain was very peaceful. After Elder Qing heard about this, he only nodded and said softly, "Well done." Then there was no more sound. Lan Sui wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He hesitated for a while and said in a low voice, "Elder Qing, it seems the other 2 old men can't wait any longer. They have sent people to the lower courtyard. I guess they are going to deal with Jiang Chun." "Let them go," Elder Qing said. "As long as they don't send the Heavenly Court's disciples, the others will die if they go." "Elder Qing, you have so much confidence in Jiang Chun?" Lan Sui was stunned. He knew who the 2 old fellows sent. One was a berserker ranked 36th in the Earth Court, and the other was an Earth Realm Dark Master ranked 33th in the Earth Court. One fought like a madman, and the other had superb assassination skills. These 2 people had been casually charged with a crime and were demoted to the Middle Court's lower court. Have you forgotten? He was the strongest disciple in the Sifang Divine Court, Elder Qing said with a smile. "Even though the Quadrant Divine Institute is inferior to my Billowing Wave Academy, if he's able to become the strongest disciple in the Quadrant Divine Institute, then with his strength after entering the Billowing Wave Academy, the disciples of the Earth Court won't be able to do anything to him." "That's true." Lan Sui was relieved, but he was still a little worried. Meanwhile, in Jiang Chen's cave residence, Qing Kong Xinyue stared at Jiang Chun, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. She blinked her beautiful eyes with curiosity. It was hard for her to imagine what kind of person Jiang Chun was. He attracted the heavenly tribulation, destroyed the Martial Pavilion's branch palace, and even killed the branch palace's palace master in front of Lan Sui. After doing all this, he was only punished with 3 days of confinement. She couldn't figure out what her grandfather was thinking. Most importantly, the other grand characters of the Wave Academy didn't say anything either. What kind of meaning was hidden within all of this? At the same time, she was also puzzled as to how strong Jiang Chun was. Although he had used the power of the heavenly tribulation to destroy the Martial Pavilion's branch and kill the branch hall master, it was impossible for him to defeat the heavenly tribulation. However, borrowing the power of the heavenly tribulation was also a manifestation of one's strength. "Hey, if I were to fight you, who would win?" Qing Kong Xinyue asked curiously. She, who had always been confident in her strength, started to have doubts. "You'll win," Jiang Chun said in a daze without opening his eyes. "You better be more serious," Qing Kong Xinyue shouted. "You'll win." At that moment, Jiang Chun opened his eyes and said seriously, "I think I'll win too." Qing Kong Xinyue suddenly smiled. She was like a blooming flower that made the sky and earth lose its color. Jiang Chun was also stunned. He couldn't help but drool from the corner of his mouth. Qing Kong Xinyue was instantly enraged. She threw out a blow and hit Jiang Chun's body. Bang! Jiang Chun was sent flying again. He immediately got up from afar and muttered, "Female berserker, I can't afford to offend her. I can't afford to offend her." "Hey, what are you talking about?" Qing Kong Xinyue shouted. However, she realized that Jiang Chun had already started to take off his clothes. Her face turned red. She hurriedly turned her head and said angrily, "What are you doing?" "Soaking in the spirit spring." Jiang Chun smiled and jumped into the spirit spring. When he reached the 1,000 Demon Stone, Jiang Chun was immediately excited when he saw the intense divine light rising from the thousand demon stone. The divine light turns into mist and doesn't disperse. The stone floor cracks like an egg breaking its shell. Big brother, are you going to be born? Speaking of which, don't let me down. When you transform, you'll look like this. And those magical powers, you'll have to follow the ancient books. Do you understand? In the future, I'll be above all creatures, and you'll be below me. You'll be below me. How about that? It's decided then, right? Jiang Chun talked in front of the thousand demon stone. He slowly opened the ancient book and waved it page by page in front of the thousand demon stone. At the same time, Jiang Chun was also fantasizing about having a blue-eyed dragon by his side in the future. That awe-inspiring. By the way, what has the Nine Nether Phoenix been doing recently? Thinking about his mount, Jiang Chun also thought of the Nine Nether Phoenix. The Nine Nether Phoenix hadn't spoken for a long time since they parted ways at the Sifang Divine Courtyard. Thinking about it, Jiang Chun couldn't help but ask, "Hey, hairless guy, what have you been doing recently? Which clan's girl are you harming?" "Boss, save me. I was brought to the Heavenly Temple by Nian Chang'e. There's an old man staring at me and drooling all day. It looks like he wants to stew me and eat me." The Nine Nether Phoenix immediately replied. However, before it finished speaking, it was interrupted. Obviously, someone was interfering with the Nine Nether Phoenix's voice transmission. It can't be. Jiang Chen's heart tightened when he heard this. He knew who the old man the Nine Nether Phoenix was talking about was. It was definitely Nian Chang'e's master, the pervert who often ate divine beasts. Boss, can you hear me? Come and save me. I feel like I'm going to be braised. No, I might be steamed, or the kind that's dipped in sauce and eaten raw. Not long after, the Nine Nether Phoenix's voice was heard again. This time, it was sobbing and its voice was full of panic. I can't help you, Jiang Chun replied with a wry smile. For my sake, he probably won't eat you, as long as you're obedient. After saying that, Jiang Chun hurriedly cut off the voice transmission. After mourning for the Nine Nether Phoenix for 3 seconds in his heart, he once again began to teach in front of the thousand demon stone. The following days passed very peacefully. Jiang Chun cultivated at the bottom of the spirit spring while teaching the thousand demon stone. Just like that, 3 days later, on this day, a vibration came from Jiang Chun's body. A soul was condensed. At the same time, at the back of his neck, a mass of multicolored light bloomed, and a Taoist rhyme spread out. Chapter 250. The back of the cervical spine led directly to the brain. It was one of the most important parts of the human body. At this moment, multicolored light gathered and Taoist rhymes filled the air. It was as if a Buddha was chanting scriptures. A mighty aura erupted from Jiang Chen's body. With a thought, he became even more in sync with the qi of the great Tao. The first soul of the six unity art has been condensed. Jiang Chen's eyes shone brightly. When he opened and closed his eyes, the sun and moon seemed to rise and fall. At the back of his cervical spine, at the third segment, there was a ball of light that looked like the sun. It was shining with divine light. This was the Tao seed. It was a third-stage Tao seed. It's easier to comprehend the Tao now that I'm in sync with the Tao. My future cultivation will also be smoother, Jiang Chun said softly. Next, Jiang Chun stabilized his cultivation. A few days later, on this day, Jiang Chun rushed out of the spirit spring. Just as he put on his clothes, Qingkong Xianyue appeared in front of him. 2 people came looking for you. One is a berserker, and the other is an Earth Realm Dark Master. They want to fight you to the death. Qingkong Xianyue frowned and seemed a little worried. You can choose not to accept. Why not? Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows and said mockingly, Are you worried that I can't beat them? Those 2 are in the Earth Realm, and you're only in the Venerable Realm. Qingkong Xianyue said, The higher the realm, the more difficult it is to cross the difference in strength. Moreover, those 2 are famous in the Earth Court for being strong. One is ranked 36th, and the other is ranked 33th. Jiang Chun laughed when he heard this. Without saying anything, he turned and walked out of the cave abode. Now that the 3-day confinement was over, Jiang Chun could move freely. Walking out of the cave abode, Jiang Chun walked toward the arena of life and death. He didn't need to say anything. He only needed to appear in front of everyone, and the two people who came to issue the challenge would appear. The truth was just as Jiang Chun thought. When he arrived near the arena of life and death, there were already 2 youths standing in the arena. One of them was dressed in white. He had a delicate face, but he was a little short. There was a cold glint in his eyes, and his body exuded a shocking murderous aura. This person must be the Earth Realm Dark Master. The other person was a tall and sturdy young man. He was bare-chested and held a long red wooden stick in his hand. There seemed to be nothing in his eyes, but in reality, he was looking down on everything. Without waiting for Jiang Chun to arrive, the burly youth pointed the long stick in his hand at Jiang Chun. He lifted his chin slightly and shouted arrogantly, "Come here, accept your death." This guy probably isn't as strong as Qin Kong and Xian Yue, Jiang Chun thought to himself. He couldn't help but roll his eyes and said, "You two can go together." "All right, as you wish." He thought that the two of them would want to save some face and wouldn't attack together. However, no one would have thought that the two of them seemed to have discussed this beforehand, or perhaps they were well aware of Jiang Chen's personality and immediately agreed. However, Jiang Chen didn't care. To him, 2 Earth Realm cultivators were no different from ants. In the next moment, Jiang Chen leaped up and stood on the arena. Boom! Boom! In an instant, the berserker took a step forward. The berserk blood on his body erupted like a blood cloud that enveloped him. He swung the long red wooden stick in his hand, and the shadows of the stick descended one after another. It was like an endless arm that swung towards Jiang Chun. At the same time, the Earth Realm Dark Master's figure disappeared into thin air without a sound. "Berserker? Let me try." Jiang Chun chuckled. The blood in his body was boiling and red like jade. His eyes were even redder. "Kill!" With a loud roar, Jiang Chen's hair danced wildly as he punched out 3 times in a row. Boom! Boom! With 3 explosive sounds, the fist light was like a blood-red sun, shattering the layers of stick shadows. At the same time, Jiang Chun threw his palm over to his left. The Dark Master, who had been hiding in front of him, showed his true form. Then, without waiting for the Earth Realm Dark Master to react, Jiang Chun punched him in the chest. This punch was so powerful that it seemed to have the power to split a mountain. If an ordinary person received this punch, they would be seriously injured even if they didn't die. However, the Earth Realm Dark Master's body flashed with light, and waves of water appeared on his body. The water ripples rippled on his body like a battle suit and neutralized most of the power of Jiang Chen's punch. As such, he was only forced back a few steps before concealing himself again. Soft water Dao Soul? Jiang Chun was slightly surprised. This Dao Soul was quite a headache. The soft water Dao Soul was like water. It could subdue hardness and neutralize the opponent's attack. It could also be condensed and used to kill. This was a Dao Soul that could attack and defend. Earth with Thousand Array. At this moment, the long stick in the berserker's hand slammed into the ground. In an instant, the ground shook, and long sticks burst out from the ground like earth spikes. In an instant, they turned into a cage. Jiang Chun focused his eyes and stomped his feet on the ground, taking 3 steps in a row. The terrifying power of heaven and earth surged like a tide and turned into ripples that burst out, shattering the earth spikes around him. However, 6 of the thorns had turned into a cage, trapping Jiang Chun within 30 feet of it. There was also an earth-type spell that turned into a giant beast. It opened its abyss-like mouth and pounced on Jiang Chun. At the same time, a cold light broke through the air. It was a nail that was filled with poisonous fog. In an instant, it pierced Jiang Chen's chest. "You're dead." The Earth Realm Dark Master's voice rang out, carrying a bone-chilling aura and a strong killing intent. "I'm dead." Jiang Chen chuckled and patted his chest, revealing his undamaged skin. This scene truly caused the Earth Realm Dark Master to be moved. That nail was a 7-star armor hidden weapon, and it was highly poisonous, not to mention an Exalt Realm cultivator. Even an upper-level Earth Realm expert would find it difficult to resist once pierced. However, Jiang Chen only tore the clothes on his chest. The color of glass flowed on his skin, and the reddish-gold color shone brilliantly like a boulder. It actually shattered the nail into powder. I underestimated the two of you, Jiang Chen whispered, a berserker and an Earth-type arcane master. A dark master who is proficient in hidden weapons. The two of you are quite strong. You'll definitely die today. Even the top 10 in the Earth Court would have to be wary of the two of us working together. You're just an ant in the lower-level Exalt Realm. How can you contend against the two of us? The Berserker and Dark Master shouted angrily, but their palms were sweating. This was because Jiang Chen's strength had completely exceeded their imagination. Boom! At this moment, Jiang Chen took 9 steps in a row. Sovereign descends to the 9 heavens, erupting to the extreme. A vast and mighty aura erupted, and it seemed as if the mountains and rivers beneath his feet were crumbling. Rumbling sounds rang out one after another, and the 6 earth spikes that trapped Jiang Chen shattered. Chapter 251. The cage shattered and Jiang Chen dashed out like a dragon from the abyss, heading straight for the Berserker. In an instant, Jiang Chen arrived in front of the Berserker and threw a punch. It was as if a huge sun had descended. Boom! With a loud explosion, the Berserker's long red wooden stick was shattered by the punch. His body was sent flying. Puff! Blood sprayed out from his mouth, mixed with his shattered internal organs. His life aura was extremely weak. In the next moment, Jiang Chen swept his leg like a dragon swinging its tail and landed behind him. Bang! Immediately, the hidden Dark Master was sent flying with a kick, and his soft water spirit was destroyed. Crack! Crack! Along with the sound of bones breaking, the hidden cultivator's chest caved in, and his ribs were broken. One of his ribs even pierced his heart, killing him on the spot. Since it's a battle of life and death, I won't hold back. Jiang Chen chuckled. He pointed his finger and ended the Berserker's life. Then, Jiang Chen turned around and walked down the arena. As for the spectators in the surroundings, they were all stunned by what they saw. One of them was ranked 36th, and the other was ranked 33th in the Earth Court. Both of them had joined forces to fight Jiang Chen. In the end, they were defeated. A disciple from the lower house has such combat strength? As long as he's in the lower house, who else can stand out? What a monster! He's a freak! The spectators exclaimed and cursed silently. With Jiang Chen's strength, he could enter the inner house or even the Earth Court. However, this guy chose to stay in the middle house and the lower house. I strongly request that this guy enter the upper house. No, enter the inner house. That's right. This guy shouldn't stay in the lower house. Many people were furious and went to the disciplinary hall to apply. Unfortunately, Jiang Chen was now Elder Qing's man. Without Elder Qing's approval, the disciplinary hall of the lower house did not dare to promote Jiang Chen to the upper house. It was even more impossible for him to be promoted to the inner court or even the Earth Court. So he's so strong. In a certain corner, Xiao Qingyi witnessed the entire process of this battle and smiled bitterly in his heart. He suddenly realized how ridiculous it was to challenge Jiang Chen to a life-and-death battle. Jiang Chen had the absolute strength to crush him. Even though I'm now his follower, what can I do? Xiao Qingyi sighed. Part of his cultivation had been cut off by the martial pavilion, and his essence, qi, and spirit were almost depleted. It was difficult for him to even cultivate now. If there were no accidents, he would not be able to make any progress in his cultivation within the next 3 to 5 years. In fact, it would be difficult for him to continue cultivating for the rest of his life. Come with me. At this moment, Jiang Chen arrived in front of Xiao Qingyi. After speaking softly, he walked towards the cave house. A dozen breaths later, the two of them entered the cave abode. Jiang Chun directly forced out a wisp of essence blood and pressed it between Xiao Qingyi's eyebrows. Essence blood nurtured by the power of heaven and earth, in addition to the immortal bird Dao soul and a special saint body. The effect of Jiang Chen's essence blood was comparable to a saint medicine. Xiao Qingyi froze on the spot. He only felt the essence, qi, and spirit in his body rapidly recovering. Even the cultivation that had been cut off was gradually recovering. At this speed, he would be able to recover to his peak state in half a month at most. What kind of blood is this? Half an hour later, Xiao Qingyi refined this wisp of essence blood and asked in confusion, "It's human blood. What else can it be?" Jiang Chun said in annoyance, "I said before that if you follow me, unless I die, you'll definitely live. Then you went to the martial pavilion for me." Xiao Qingyi said softly. Jiang Chun waved his hand. "You followed me, so you're mine. I can only kill or torture my people. No one else can touch them. If you touch them, you're not giving me face. If you don't give me face, why should I give face to anyone else?" With that, Jiang Chun waved his hand impatiently. "Go, cultivate well. I still have things for you to do in the future." "Okay." Xiao Qingyi nodded. Looking at Jiang Chen's indifferent and impatient expression, he felt warmth in his heart. Ever since the 6 gates of hell were destroyed, Xiao Qingyi, the only inheritor, had a very difficult life. He lived humbly in the martial pavilion and was ordered around by others. On the outside, he seemed to have endless glory, but in reality, no one could understand the coldness in his heart. Now that he had become Jiang Chen's follower, he felt a sense of home, or rather, it was a feeling similar to brotherly love. In short, Xiao Qingyi cared a lot about this feeling. What a person who cares about his reputation. Walking out of the cave, Xiao Qingyi looked up at the sky and said softly, "You destroyed the martial pavilion branch for me, but you still refuse to admit it. Following you very good." At this moment, in the cave, Jiang Chun and Qingkong Xianyue were staring at each other. Qingkong Xuanyue's face was filled with anger. She gritted her teeth, and her perfect face was slightly dark. "Speak! Why did you lie to me?" After a few breaths, Qingkong Xianyue shouted angrily. The spiritual power in her body surged, and she looked like she was about to attack. Jiang Chun was struck dumb. He said, "What did I lie to you about? You can beat those 2 people, but why can't you beat me?" Qingkong Xianyue questioned. "I can beat that berserker and the Dark Master. Why must I beat you?" Jiang Chun retorted. With that, Jiang Chun turned around and planned to teach the 1,000 Demon Stone again. However, just as he turned around, Qingkong Xianyue suddenly spoke with a hint of resentment. "I'm ranked 39th in the Earth Court." Jiang Chun stumbled and almost fell to the ground. "You can beat those ranked 36th and 33rd in the Earth Court, but you can't beat me? Are you lying to me?" Qingkong Xuanyue's face darkened. "With your strength, you still want me to protect you? Also, when I attacked you before, why didn't you fight back?" Jiang Chun didn't know what to say. Should he tell Qingkong Xianyue that she was just a rookie in his eyes and that he had no interest in attacking her? If he said that, would Qingkong Xianyue explode in anger? Would she run to Elder Qing or Ancestor Qing to complain? With that thought, Jiang Chun said with a serious face, "Heaven and earth, all things have a Tao that can restrain them. I can beat them, but I can't beat you. This is the Tao that can restrain them." With that, Jiang Chun pretended to be unfathomable and asked lightly, "Do you understand?" Qingkong Xianyue was stunned on the spot. She was fooled by Jiang Chun and didn't react for a long time. When she came back to her senses, she found that Jiang Chun had already entered the spirit spring. "You bastard! Are you deliberately playing with me?" Qingkong Xianyue roared. Her beautiful face seemed to be burning with flames. Chapter 252. Qingkong Xianyue felt very uncomfortable. She felt that she had been deceived by Jiang Chun. At the same time, she was also guessing how powerful Jiang Chun was. Qingkong Xianyue even suspected that Jiang Chun was deliberately letting her win. Did he have some thoughts about her? I'm so beautiful. Any man would have thoughts about me. Qingkong Xianyue was very confident. She also felt that Jiang Chun was very handsome. At this moment, Jiang Chun was sitting cross-legged in front of the 1,000 demon stone as usual. He was teaching, hoping that the 1,000 demon stone would transform into a blue-eyed dragon after it was formed. Time passed by slowly, until half a month later. On this day, Jiang Chun came out of seclusion. His body was surrounded by divine light, and his essence, energy, and spirit had reached the pinnacle of this realm. He was ready to go out and cultivate his second soul to undergo the heavenly tribulation. The Billow Academy was very big. There was an independent place for people to undergo the heavenly tribulation. When Jiang Chun arrived, he found that the place was surrounded by people. There were tens of thousands of disciples in the Billow Academy. More than half of them were gathered here. In front of him, there was a young man in a black Taoist robe. He was standing in the air and undergoing the heavenly tribulation. The heavenly tribulation clouds were thick and dark. Golden lightning flashed like countless sharp swords descending from the sky and striking the young man's body. He's not a disciple of the Billow Academy? Jiang Chun asked curiously. The Billow Academy had strict rules. All the disciples had to wear the Billow Academy's uniform. If this young man in a black Taoist robe was not a disciple of the Billow Academy, why was he here to undergo the heavenly tribulation? Moreover, looking at the appearance of the heavenly tribulation, it should be the extremely powerful golden lightning heavenly tribulation. This kind of heavenly tribulation belonged to one of the 5 elements. It was very powerful. Ordinary people could not withstand it at all. For ordinary people, if they encountered the golden lightning heavenly tribulation while undergoing the heavenly tribulation, it was equivalent to death. However, the young man in front of him was surrounded by Taoist rhymes. A reddish-gold bell hung above his head. His body was shining with divine light. He stood under the heavenly tribulation without moving an inch. The golden lightning that was like a sharp sword crashed down, but it could not hurt him at all. The disciples of Heaven and Earth Pavilion are indeed strong. The 7th metal lightning, heavenly tribulation, actually couldn't hurt him at all. Sai, don't mention it. I reckon that in this year's competition between the 2 academies, the Billowing Wave Academy will be trampled on by the Heaven and Earth Pavilion again. There were many sounds of discussion in the surroundings. They were all talking about the young man in Taoist robes and the friendly spar between the Heaven and Earth Pavilion and the Billow Academy. The Heaven and Earth Pavilion and the Billows Academy were ranked 1st and 2nd academies. They had prestige in the entire godless mainland. Every once in a while, these 2 academies would have a competition. Nominally, it was to promote the relationship between the 2 academies. In reality, it was just a way for the Heaven and Earth Pavilion to stabilize their position as number 1. Every year, the disciples of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion would be able to crush the disciples of the Billowing Waves Academy to the ground without any accidents. Tomorrow was the day of the competition between the 2 academies. The young man who was undergoing his tribulation was one of the disciples sent by the Heaven and Earth Pavilion to participate in the competition. As there were very few disciples in the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, there were about 10 of them. Therefore, each side would only send 3 people for each competition. Other than this young Taoist, who else came from the Heaven and Earth Pavilion? Jiang Chun asked the person beside him. Jiang Chun? The young man turned around when he heard that. When he saw that it was Jiang Chun, he couldn't help but shudder. It was because this young man was from the Martial Pavilion. You don't know? Jiang Chun asked. I know. The young man was also afraid of Jiang Chun. After all, Jiang Chun had destroyed the Martial Pavilion's branch hall in the Billows Academy. Moreover, the Martial Pavilion's headquarters still hadn't responded. From this, it could be seen how strong Jiang Chun was and how strong his backer was. This young Taoist is called King. He's in the Upper Earth realm and is an arcane master. The young man hurriedly said, the other 2 are the 2 disciples that the Heaven and Earth Pavilion recently accepted. One is called Lan Xuanji, and the other is called Little Fire God. Lan Xuanji? Little Fire God? Jiang Chun was stunned. These two defeated opponents actually came to the Billows Academy to participate in the competition. Only 3 disciples? Jiang Qin frowned and said, "That's quite boring." Boring? The young man was stunned. Then his face darkened. He smiled bitterly and said, "How can it be boring? The Billows Academy is going to lose face again. It's like this every year. The Billows Academy's disciples can't beat the Heaven and Earth Pavilion's disciples." "Oh, is that so?" Jiang Qin smiled and didn't say anything else. After a few breaths, Jiang Qin originally planned to wait for King to finish his tribulation before going through his own. However, the Taoist rhyme in his body was connected to his soul and connected to the heaven and earth. The heavenly tribulation began. At this moment, Jiang Qin was at his wit's end. Unable to suppress the heavenly tribulation, he could only rush to the square. "What are you doing?" "Damn, that's Jiang Qin. What is he doing?" "King is undergoing the heavenly tribulation. What is he doing there? Isn't he afraid of being implicated by the heavenly tribulation of Metal Age? He's courting death." Exclamations came from all around. Even King frowned and warned, "Hurry up and leave this place. Otherwise, you'll be implicated by my heavenly tribulation. You should leave. I'm afraid that my heavenly tribulation will strike you to death." Jiang Qin smiled bitterly and said, "My heavenly tribulation shouldn't be weaker than your heavenly tribulation of Metal Age." King was stunned when he heard that. Where did this kid come from? His tone was even more arrogant than his foot. In King's eyes, Jiang Qin was just a cultivator in the lower honorable realm. How powerful could his heavenly tribulation be? How could it be comparable to his heavenly tribulation of Metal Age? King didn't believe it. "Are you done? I can't suppress it anymore." Jiang Qin's voice was urgent. The heavenly tribulation chi in his body became denser and denser. An oppressive aura was slowly gathering above his head. "Not yet," King said. "How can the heavenly tribulation be so fast?" "Don't worry. Even if your heavenly tribulation implicates me, I'll be able to overcome it," King said. "But you, if you continue to stay here, you'll be implicated by my heavenly tribulation. By then, I won't be able to protect you." Boom! As soon as King finished speaking, everyone heard an explosion in the sky. Following that, 5 heavenly tribulation clouds appeared above Jiang Qin at the same time. The 5 colors seemed to have turned into the 5 elements and merged together to form a gigantic heavenly tribulation cloud. What the F asterisk CK? What the F asterisk CK? What is this? It seems to be the 5 elements heavenly tribulation. After a short moment of silence, the crowd burst into an uproar. One had to know that if an ordinary person were to encounter any of the 5 elements heavenly tribulations, it would be equivalent to death. Only peerless geniuses could withstand this kind of heavenly tribulation. For example, King's heavenly tribulation was one of the 5 elements heavenly tribulation, the heavenly tribulation of Metal Age. But now, Jiang Qin's heavenly tribulation was a combination of heavenly tribulation of metal, weak water, thick earth, azure wood, and leaf fire. This was the most powerful heavenly tribulation of Metal Age. Chapter 253. I'm the king of the heaven and earth pavilion. Farewell. At this moment, the king's expression turned serious. He cupped his hands at Jiang Qin and ran away. The king was lucky that he had just finished his own tribulation. At the same time, the king was panicking. He knew his own strength. If he encountered the 5 elements tribulation, he would be severely injured even if he didn't die. He might even be killed by the 5 elements tribulation. Therefore, he didn't dare to stay here. If he was dragged into the 5 elements tribulation, it would be a big joke. However, the 5 elements heavenly tribulation descended very quickly and even formed a domain. Before the king could leave, he was enveloped by the 5 elements tribulation's domain. Wuliang, you're a heavenly venerable. What sin did this little Taoist commit? How could you drag me into this? The king cursed. He looked at Jiang Qin with a dark face and said, "What's wrong with you? You can attract the five elements tribulation when you're just a low-level, heavenly venerable. I can't help it. Jiang Chun smiled bitterly. You didn't see the red lotus karmic fire tribulation. It's much stronger than the five elements tribulation. When the king heard this, he couldn't say a word. At the same time, he was guessing who Jiang Chun was. He should be a disciple of the heavenly court in the Billow Academy. Hey, little Taoist, if I can't pass the five elements tribulation, please send my body back to the heaven and earth pavilion. Find a good place to bury me. The king smiled bitterly. It's okay. I'm here. Jiang Chun smiled. I dragged you into this, so I can't harm you. Besides, I have no enmity with you. Boom! Boom! As soon as he said that, lightning fell from the sky. It was colorful and filled with the power of the five elements. The power of aged metal turned into a sharp golden sword. The power of weak water was like a layer of white mist. The power of thick earth was like a mountain tablet. The power of azure wood was like a huge palm. And the power of leaf fire was like a sea of fire. They fell down together and drowned Jiang Chun in an instant. The king's expression was solemn. There was a huge bell hanging above his head. As it rang, a Taoist rhyme filled the air. He was very nervous and used almost all of his strength. He was deeply afraid that he wouldn't be able to pass the five elements heavenly tribulation. However, in the next moment, the king was stupefied and in complete disarray. This was because the power of the heavenly tribulation that enveloped Jiang Chun had shattered in an instant. It turned into nothingness. Then, Jiang Chun rushed toward King Shang. As he waved his fists, the fist aura turned into a golden dragon and bombarded King Shang's five elements heavenly tribulation. Boom! Boom! With five explosions, the five elements lightning that was falling towards King was shattered into nothingness. Are you abnormal? The king was dumbfounded. He had seen valiant people, but he had never seen such a valiant person. This was simply inhumane. King was stunned in place, as if he had forgotten that he was involved in the five elements heavenly tribulation. He had no idea about his own safety. In his eyes, there was only the young man standing in front of him. When did Billow Academy take in such a ferocious disciple? As King Shang thought to himself, his pupils constricted abruptly. That was because he saw Jiang Chun rush up and escape into the tribulation cloud. Boom! Boom! In an instant, the lightning in the tribulation cloud exploded. The five elements heavenly tribulation burned like raging flames. There were also many fist auras that turned into huge suns and caused a stir in the tribulation cloud. In just a dozen breaths' time, a five elements tribulation cloud was shattered by the fist auras and turned into nothingness. Then Jiang Chun rushed into another tribulation cloud. In an extremely powerful manner, he punched with both fists and shattered the tribulation cloud. At this moment, the two heavenly tribulations disappeared. All of this had happened in less than 30 breaths of time. Are you still not leaving? At this moment, Jiang Chun landed beside King Shang and said mockingly, Do you still want to go through another heavenly tribulation? Ah? King Shang was dumbfounded. Didn't he pass it already? However, before King Shang could react, the heavenly tribulation aura in Jiang Chun's body exploded again. Moreover, the heavenly tribulation aura this time was even more ferocious. You still want to go through another heavenly tribulation? King Shang was dumbfounded. What kind of monster is this? Is one five elements heavenly tribulation not enough? Do you still want to go through a second one? When King Shang thought of the horror of the five elements heavenly tribulation, fear flashed in his eyes. He immediately flew far away. At this moment, Jiang Chun looked up at the sky calmly and said softly, You're here again? Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, a raging flame seemed to be burning in the originally clear sky. Then the crimson tribulation cloud spread out like a lotus. It was burning with raging flames as if it could burn everything in the world. Red lotus hellfire tribulation. This heavenly tribulation again? The people of Billow Academy were shocked. It was not the first time many of them had seen this heavenly tribulation. Moreover, the person undergoing the Red Lotus Hellfire tribulation this time was still the same young man, Jiang Chun. The group of people was dumbfounded and even more confused. Ordinary people might attract heavenly tribulation when they broke through. However, Jiang Chun did not break through either. Moreover, after entering Billow Academy, Jiang Chun's heavenly tribulation had become more frequent. Did this guy commit a sin? What the? He's so fierce. King Shang smiled bitterly. As a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, he could look down on his peers. At least in Billow Academy, he was invincible among the disciples whose cultivation levels were similar to his. However, now it seemed that the young man in front of him, whose cultivation level was much lower than his, was so strong that it made his hair stand on end. King Shang knew very well that with his cultivation level at the upper level of the Earth realm, he would most likely lose miserably if he faced Jiang Chun, a cultivator at the lower level of the honorable realm. Fellow cultivator, who is this young man undergoing the heavenly tribulation? King Shang asked a person beside him. I'm not sure. I heard he's from the Quadrant Divine Institute and has a grudge against the Jiang family and the Martial Pavilion, the person replied. He's from Billow Academy? Don't tell me he's the one who won the 4 Academy competition in Billow Academy? King Shang asked. Upon hearing this, the person who was asked immediately shook his head. After all, he was not familiar with Jiang Chun and did not know about Jiang Chun's situation. However, someone said, that's him. As soon as he entered Billow Academy, he became famous. However, he has a bad reputation and often makes mistakes. Vice Dean Li Yuan. He actually gave such a monster to Billow Academy? King Shang looked calm on the surface, but his heart was in a mess. Back then, the top 4 disciples of the Quadrant Divine Institute would enter Heaven and Earth Pavilion during the 4 Academy competition. All the disciples of Heaven and Earth Pavilion knew about this. However, when Li Yuan went to Quadrant Divine Institute, he only brought back 2 disciples. One was Lan Xuanji, and the other was Little Fire God. As for Lu Zhong, he left Quadrant Divine Institute and was the successor of Seclusion Temple. Naturally, it was not appropriate for him to be accepted into Heaven and Earth Pavilion. As for the other person, according to Li Yuan, his aptitude was too poor, so he did not bring him back to Heaven and Earth Pavilion. But now, His Majesty was moved and shocked by the youth whose aptitude Li Yuan had said was too poor. If such a person's aptitude was too poor, what kind of person would be considered as having a good aptitude? Chapter 254. Perhaps only those senior brothers from the Heaven and Earth Pavilion can be compared to him. The king thought to himself. When he thought of those senior brothers of his, they were all extremely ferocious. However, the king did not think that Jiang Chun could compete with his senior brothers. After all, his senior brothers had very high cultivation bases and outstanding talents. They were like freaks. Under the same circumstances, no matter how talented Jiang Chun was, his cultivation would not be able to catch up with his senior brothers. How could he compete with them? However, the king had to admit that Jiang Chun was really powerful, especially now, when he saw Jiang Chun standing in the Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation without moving. He allowed the flames to burn his body and the lightning to strike him, but not even a strand of his hair was broken. After half an hour, the Red Lotus Hellfire Tribulation disappeared. Jiang Chun did not say anything and turned to return to his cave abode. However, at this moment, he saw Lan Xuanji and Little Fire God waving at him from the crowd in the distance. It's rare to see an acquaintance. Jiang Chun whispered and flew to the two. After landing, he asked with a smile, "How is your cultivation in Heaven and Earth Pavilion?" Heaven and Earth Pavilion is rich in cultivation resources. There are all kinds of ancient books, cultivation methods, and martial arts techniques, Lan Xuanji said. Cultivating in Heaven and Earth Pavilion is far better than anywhere else. Yes, and the disciples in Heaven and Earth Pavilion are stronger than the other. After we entered Heaven and Earth Pavilion, we were at the bottom. Those people are too powerful. Little fire god smiled bitterly and said, I think they can compete with you. Oh, is that so? Jiangchen laughed and said, Okay, you guys have a good chat. I'll go back to my cave abode first. If you have time, let's spar again, Lan Xuanji said hurriedly. After cultivating in heaven and earth pavilion for a while, I'm much stronger than before. Little fire god quickly nodded and said, Me too. I want to spar with you again. Sure, let's talk about it when I have time. Jiangchen waved his hand and turned to leave. At the same time, in Elder Qing's cave residence at the back of the mountain, the disciples sent by the Heaven and Earth Pavilion this time aren't very strong, but they can't be underestimated. Elder Qing said in a low voice, Every year, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion wins. I wonder if this time, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion sent 2 paragons and 1 Earth Realm disciple. I was thinking, why don't we send Mu Xingyi and Zi Luoqiong to deal with those 2 paragons? Lan Sui suggested. As for that little Taoist king, I'm afraid none of the many Earth Realm cultivators in Heaven and Earth Pavilion are his match. Out of the 3 matches, if the Surge Academy can win 1 match, it would be considered pretty good. If they can win 2 matches, we will reward them handsomely. Elder Qing said. Elder Qing's eyes suddenly lit up as he asked, How is Jiangchen now? He just entered the Exalted Realm. Lan Sui said truthfully. Also, I don't know what's going on with that kid. He's going through his tribulation every few days. I reckon he's committed a lot of sins. Ah? Exalted Realm? Elder Qing's gaze became grave, and he wore a smile on his face. He said in a soft voice, Then let Jiangchen and Mu Xingyi deal with those 2 venerable realm lads. As for the king, just give up. There isn't any Earth Realm cultivator in the Billow Institute who is a match for him. Lan Sui was stunned when he heard that. He did not understand what Elder Qing meant. One must know that the disciples taught by the Heaven and Earth Pavilion were all extremely powerful. Although Jiangchen was strong, in Lan Sui's eyes, he had just entered the Exalted Realm. Was he really going to fight with such a cultivation base? Lan Sui thought that Jiangchen did not have a high chance of winning. However, since Elder Qing had already made his decision, Lan Sui did not say much. Not long after, Lan Sui personally went to the Surge Academy and found Mu Xingyi, who was ranked first in the inner yard. Then, he found Jiangchen and explained the situation. When Jiangchen heard that Lan Sui wanted him to deal with Lan Xuanji and Little Fire God, he immediately shook his head and refused to agree. It's not your fault that you don't agree. After all, those 2 guys have become extremely powerful after being taught by the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. I'm afraid you're no match for them now. Lan Sui sighed and said, If we force you to fight and you lose, you'll lose face. I can understand that. Jiangchen opened his mouth, but was interrupted by Lan Sui before he could say anything. However, this is Elder Qing's idea. Even if you don't give me face, you should at least give Elder Qing some face, right? Lan Sui said. Jiangchen could not help but pout when he heard that. He said snappily, What if I win? Elder Qing said that if you win, you'll be rewarded handsomely. Lan Sui said, You'll be rewarded with a drop of true dragon blood essence. True dragon blood essence. Jiangchen's eyes narrowed as his interest was piqued. Although there were true dragons in this world, they were extremely rare. Even if a true dragon appeared, not many people would dare to fight against it, let alone slaying it and snatching its blood essence. Hence, a drop of blood essence was just like the Saint Elixir. It was something that could only be chanced upon by luck. I'll be rewarded with a drop of blood essence for each victory? Jiangchen asked. Theoretically, yes. Lan Sui nodded and said, However, you have to defeat them first. After that, Lan Sui's expression dimmed slightly as he sighed and said, The Heaven and Earth Pavilion has always been above the Billowing Wave Academy. Even if I lose, the Billowing Wave Academy will not lose face. Sigh. After that, Lan Sui left with a gloomy and dejected expression. On the other hand, Jiangchen smiled bitterly and muttered, Lan Xuanji, little fire god, you can't blame me this time. I have to give face to Elder Qing. The next morning, on this day, the square in front of the biggest palace in the Billowing Wave Academy was filled with people. It was because today was the annual competition between the disciples of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion and the disciples of the Billowing Wave Academy. As the head of the 10 great academies, in order to stabilize its position, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion would send people to the other academies almost every year for a friendly competition to secure its position. This year, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion had already started to send people to the other academies. To the other academies, the results were the same every year. They would end in defeat. However, this year was different for the Billowing Wave Academy. Of course, in the hearts of many people, the Billowing Wave Academy would still be defeated this year. However, to some people, a miracle might happen in the Billowing Wave Academy this year. The strongest person in the inner court, Mu Xingyi. He cultivates both martial arts and close combat. He can cast spells from afar. His strength is so strong that he will be the strongest person in the inner court for 3 years. At this moment, a young man in white slowly walked out from the crowd. The crowd parted to form a path for him. Even the elders in the center of the square nodded their heads continuously when they saw Mu Xingyi. It was obvious that they were praising and acknowledging his strength. "Greetings, elders. I'm Mu Xingyi from the inner court." Mu Xingyi did not say anything. After he came to the side of the elders, he stopped talking and stood quietly at the side. "Heh, I'll burn you to death," little fire god muttered as he curled his lips. There seemed to be a ball of flame burning in his palm. Chapter 255. Lan Xuanji chuckled and said softly, "Keep a low profile. He's the number 1 in the inner yard. Although the two of us have cultivated in the Heaven and Earth Pavilion for a while, we can't be so arrogant. Other than that guy, I won't submit to anyone in the same realm." Little fire god narrowed his eyes and raised his eyebrows. He said with a smile, "However, I heard that he's now a disciple of the middle yard. He shouldn't be qualified to participate in this competition, so I won't have an opponent." "Yeah, we'll win for sure." Lan Xuanji, who was always calm, nodded. As long as that guy didn't come, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion would win this year's competition. "Where's that guy?" Lan Sui stood in the middle with a gloomy face and asked an elder of the lower yard beside him. "I'm not sure. He said he's here, but I haven't seen him yet." The dean of the lower yard smiled bitterly. He knew that Jiang Chun was Elder Qing's man, so he didn't dare to meddle in Jiang Chen's affairs. Therefore, he only went to Jiang Chen's cave residence this morning to remind him. "Forget it. Since that guy doesn't want to participate, we'll let Zi Luoqiong, who's ranked number 2 in the inner yard, fight later." Lan Sui sighed. "Dean Lan Sui, is the Heaven and Earth Pavilion only sending 1 person this year?" Little Taoist Wang stood at the side and asked with a smile, "Isn't this not dignified enough? We all know the strength of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion disciples. Sending 1 person is just a formality," Lan Sui said straightforwardly. Since they knew they were going to lose, they didn't care about their reputation. After all, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion would lose to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion in the competition every year. "We'll win this year," Mu Xingyi, who had been silent, suddenly said with confidence in his eyes. "Is that so? Other than that guy, I really don't care about anyone in the same realm." Little fire god had a bad temper. He looked at Mu Xingyi and said, "Since everyone is here, shall we start? I declare that the friendly competition between the Heaven and Earth Pavilion and the Heaven and Earth Pavilion begins," Lan Sui said weakly. He thought to himself that this year would be over again. At the same time, in Jiang Chen's cave residence. At this moment, Jiang Chun was sitting cross-legged on the 10,000 demon stone under the spirit spring and was teaching. During this period of time, teaching the 1,000 demon stone had become a compulsory course for Jiang Chun. He was looking forward to the formation of the 10,000 demon stone. He wanted a blue-eyed dragon as his mount. It's over. Today, he was going to fight with the people from Heaven and Earth Pavilion. It's too late. After teaching for a while, Jiang Chun finally remembered this and hurriedly rushed out of the spirit spring, flying towards the square. However, when he arrived, almost all the people in the square had left, because Mu Xingyi had been defeated. He was defeated by Little Fire God in just one move. He was utterly defeated. After that, although Lan Sui asked Ziluoqiong to fight, Ziluoqiong knew that she would lose, so she refused. As a result, the sparring match ended prematurely. Wait! It was at this moment that Jiang Chun rushed over. He was full of vigor. He shouted loudly, "Dean Lan Sui, I'm late." What the F asterisk CK? This F asterisk King Brat. Lan Sui was furious. He stared at him and said, "How can you be late for such a thing? Don't you know that Elder Qing thinks highly of you?" Ahem, I overslept. Jiang Chun was embarrassed. After finding an excuse, he looked at Lan Xuanji and Little Fire God and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, your next opponent is me." F asterisk CK. What the F asterisk CK? Lan Xuanji and Little Fire God almost jumped up when they heard that. They even cursed. Even the little Taoist, Wang Xingyi, looked gloomy. Dean Lan Sui, you sent a disciple from the lower house to fight. Are you insulting us? The little Taoist was smart. He wanted to force Jiang Chun to be disqualified. However, Elder Qing's order could not be changed just because of Wang Xingyi's words. Moreover, it was none of his business who the Billowing Academy sent to fight. It's that guy, the little Prince of Tribulation? Jiang Chun. He's here to fight. Let's go back and take a look. Maybe he can win one round. At this moment, those who had left ran back when they heard that Jiang Chun was going to fight. At the same time, Elder Qing stood on a mountain peak 1,000 meters away from the square. He looked into the distance with a smile and said softly, "Little guy, don't let me down. Lan Xuanji, I'll leave this guy to you." Little Fire God said seriously, "I've just fought, and I'm not in my best condition." Hearing this, Lan Xuanji couldn't help but roll his eyes, speechless. Then, he looked at Wang Xingyi and asked with a wry smile, "Senior brother Wang Xingyi, can I just admit defeat?" Wang Xingyi was speechless too. "Please, as a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, don't do this, even if you don't save yourself some face. You should at least save some face for the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Admitting defeat before the fight even started? Isn't that inappropriate? Senior brother Wang Xingyi, why don't you just fight him?" Little Fire God said mockingly, "I heard. You and Jiang Chun went through the tribulation together. I'll support you, immeasurable deity." The little Taoist's morale exploded. He had touched a sore spot. However, Wang Xingyi did not agree to fight Jiang Chun. Wang Xingyi knew very well that he would be defeated if he fought with Jiang Chun. At this moment, Lan Xuanji, Wang Xingyi, and Little Fire God stood there and stared at each other. None of them wanted to fight. Jiang Chun was also stunned. He looked at Wang Xingyi and the other two and asked, "Are we still fighting? Are we still fighting? What's there to fight?" "No," Wang Xingyi and the other two said. Then, they cupped their fists and bade farewell to Lan Sui. After a few breaths, the three of them rose into the air and flew out of Billow Academy. President Lan Sui, I think I won? Jiang Chun blinked and looked at the stunned Lan Sui. He asked, "Do the 3 drops of true dragon blood essence still count?" At this moment, Lan Sui was not the only one who was stunned. The people around him were also stunned. What was going on? The 3 disciples of Heaven and Earth Pavilion did not even fight with Jiang Chun. Instead, they just admitted defeat and left. That's too cruel. As expected of the little prince of heavenly tribulation, the strongest person in the lower house, Jiang Chun. That's amazing. After a short moment of silence, the crowd burst into an uproar. Although the battle did not happen after Jiang Chun appeared, the outcome was clear. However, the result was obvious. This year's competition had changed because of Jiang Chun alone. Billow Academy victory. Li Yuan, you won't kill me when the time comes, right? Lan Sui came to his senses. The first thing that came to his mind was not the true dragon blood essence, Jiang Chun, or Elder Qing. Instead, it was the Vice Pavilion Master of Heaven and Earth Pavilion, Li Yuan. It should be known that Lan Sui was the one who personally asked for Jiang Chun from Li Yuan. If Li Yuan knew that Jiang Chun was so powerful that he could intimidate Wang Xingyi and the other two just by standing there, Li Yuan would probably want to kill him. Chapter 256. At the thought of this, Lan Sui's face fell. He announced in front of everyone, "The Billow Academy wins this year's competition. Also, I'll announce one more thing. I'll be in seclusion for this period of time and won't see anyone." After saying this, Lan Sui ran away, afraid that Li Yuan would appear in front of him in the next second. "Hey, where's my true dragon blood essence?" Jiang Chen shouted. "Are you going to give it to me or not? If not, go ask Elder Qing for it. Little guy, take it." At this moment, Elder Qing suddenly appeared in front of Jiang Chun and said with a smile, "I'll give you all 3 drops of true dragon blood essence." However, when he said this, a trace of playfulness and worry flashed across Elder Qing's eyes. "Elder Qing, what do you want to say?" Jiang Chun asked after receiving the true dragon blood essence. "You won without a fight, and your name will definitely resound in the 10 great academies." Elder Qing said, "At that time, there will be many people who will challenge you, and there will be no lack of peerless geniuses among them." "So what?" Jiang Chen asked in return. "Can you handle it?" Elder Qing asked. "What if I can't? Can you chase me out of the Billow Academy?" Jiang Chen said with a smile. Elder Qing laughed when he heard this. He slowly shook his head and said, "I can't bear to." After saying that, Elder Qing patted Jiang Chen's shoulder and left after saying, "Go ahead and do it." Jiang Chen also left and returned to his cave abode. As for winning without a fight, Jiang Chen didn't take it to heart. He didn't even take it seriously. Other than cultivating, he was only left with teaching the 1,000 Demon Stone. Other than that, he also used the 1,000-mile voice transmission to chat with a few disciples and ask about the situation. After Jiang Chun left the Quadrant Divine Courtyard, Bai Fengyu returned to the White Emperor City. Now, she was living a carefree and happy life as her own little princess. Nayland Mayer returned to the solitary North City and continued to run a broken-down restaurant. She was living a comfortable life. As for Mo Xingtian, he had always been by Jiang Chen's side. However, he didn't enter the Billowing Waves Academy. Instead, he stayed on a mountain outside the academy. As long as Jiang Chen gave the word, Mo Xingtian would rush over. As for Hualiani, she had returned to Gufang City. Plus, Hualiani's power had increased tremendously. She was about to control the Hua family. Only one person's whereabouts made Jiang Chen somewhat worried and puzzled. This person was none other than Jiang Lu. Not long after Jiang Chun left the 4 Cardinal Divine Courtyard, Jiang Lu suddenly disappeared. However, there was no contractual relationship between Jiang Chun and Jiang Lu. Therefore, Jiang Chun was unable to use the 1,000-mile sound transmission to contact Jiang Lu. This made Jiang Chun somewhat worried. After all, Jiang Lu was a simple and honest person. If he were to encounter an accident outside, he didn't know if that kid would be able to handle it. As for other matters, everything was fine. After some time, I'll return to the Reverend sect to take a look. Jiang Chen thought, I'm just a hands-off boss, cough cough. Days passed one by one. Jiang Chen cultivated and taught the 1,000 Demon Stone every day. Just like that, a month passed. During this month, Jiang Chen cultivated nonstop. Both his souls had successfully passed the tribulation, and his Dao seed had reached the 6th stage. In the eyes of ordinary people, the 6th stage Dao seed was already at the upper level of the reverent realm. It was even enough for ordinary people to break through to the earth realm. However, the 6th stage Dao seed was just the beginning for Jiang Chen. He still had 4 souls that had yet to pass the tribulation. You've been in the cave abode all this time? On this day, Jiang Chen came out of the spirit spring and saw Qin Kong Xianyue sitting cross-legged not far away. Grandpa asked me to protect you. Qin Kong Xianyue stammered without any confidence. After all, the news of Jiang Chen defeating the Heaven and Earth Pavilion disciple without a fight had already spread throughout the 10 great academies. Qin Kong Xianyue also understood that Jiang Chen's strength was above hers. There was no need for her to protect him. Protect me? Jiang Chun said mockingly. Just protect me? Didn't your grandpa ask you to do something else? As soon as he said that, Qin Kong Xuanyue's face suddenly flushed red. She lowered her head slightly, looking shy. Jiang Chun was dumbfounded when he saw this. He just asked casually. He didn't expect Qin Kong Xuanyue to have such a reaction. Could it be that the green ancestor asked Qin Kong Xuanyue to come over for some other purpose? This shy look, could it be? Jiang Chun realized something. He stared and said, "The green ancestor didn't ask you to seduce me, right?" Seduce? Qin Kong Xuanyue was anxious. She stared with her beautiful eyes and shouted, "It's not seduction. My grandpa said that the future of the Green Ancestor Tribe and Billows Academy is all on you. He asked me to come here to pull you into the Green Ancestor Tribe." As soon as she said that, Qin Kong Xuanyue quickly shut her mouth. She realized that she had spilled the beans. However, Jiang Chun just smiled and didn't mind. He asked curiously, "You want to pull me into the Green Ancestor Tribe? What do you mean?" "Of course it's a marriage alliance." Qin Kong Xuanyue blushed again. She was even more shy. "Heir!" Jiang Chun was stunned. He then understood that the Green Ancestor wanted him to marry Qin Kong Xuanyue. Marry into her family? Jiang Chun frowned and counted with his fingers. Bai Fengyu, Naylan Mayer, Hua Yini. If I include you, you'll be the fourth. No. How can I think like that? There's nothing between me and my disciples. But even if you want to follow me, you'll have to ask if my disciples agree. After all, you're a girl. Jiang Chun mumbled and frowned. Every time he thought about his disciples, he would have a headache. There were 3 disciples who wanted to sleep with their master. How could Jiang Chun not have a headache? The 4th? You flirt. At this moment, Qin Kong Xuanyue was glaring at Chen Xiaobei. She puffed her cheeks and said angrily, "I didn't expect you to be such a flirt." "I'm a flirt?" Jiang Chun was confused. He explained, "Those are my 3 disciples." However, Qin Kong Xuanyue seemed to have confirmed her thoughts. Her face darkened. At the same time, she waved her hand and a large pile of letters of challenge flew in front of Jiang Chun. Burning Heaven Academy's disciple, Xie Tong. Witheredwood Ancient Temple's disciple, Yuan Sheng. Northern Wilderness Academy's disciple, Jin Hao. Jiang Chun looked at these letters of challenge and could not help but smile bitterly. This was because these letters of challenge were from the top 10 academies. Thinking about it, they must have heard that Jiang Chun had won without a fight, and all of them wanted to challenge Jiang Chun. However, Jiang Chun did not want to accept the challenge. After all, there were more than 30 letters of challenge. If he accepted them one by one, it would be a waste of time. At first, he wanted to ignore them. However, when he turned around and left the cave, Jiang Chun saw a letter of challenge from the corner of his eye. It had the words Tianxue written on it. Chapter 257. At this moment, Jiang Chun's eyes narrowed, and he was even more moved. Tianxue. For Cardinal Divine Institute's Tianxue. Jiang Chun frowned. Wasn't Tianxue already dead? One had to know that when Tianxue released the 9 Brilliance Ghost Capturing Art and released the Empress, she had clearly exchanged her life for the Empress. Only then was she able to release the 9 Brilliance Ghost Capturing Art. But now, not only was Tianxue not dead, but she had also returned to 4 Cardinal Divine Institute. What's going on? A person who released the 9 Brilliance Ghost Capturing Art can still survive? Jiang Chun had a puzzled expression. He had never heard of such a thing. Out of curiosity, Jiang Chun picked up Tianxue's challenge letter and said to Qin Kong Xuanyue, "I will accept this challenge letter from 4 Cardinal Divine Institute. Help me inform them. The people who sent the challenge letter are all in Billow Academy. They have been waiting for you for a month." Qin Kong Xuanyue said snappily, "After you go out, shout to the public square and say that you are Jiang Chun. Someone will immediately look for you." Jiang Chun was speechless. He thought to himself that it wasn't good to be too famous. After that, Jiang Chun left. However, he didn't go to the public square. Instead, He went to the tribulation area. After cultivating for a month, Jiang Qin's first soul had been cultivated to the extreme and could undergo tribulation. Isn't that Jiang Qin? Look, he's heading to the tribulation area. It can't be, right? He's going to undergo tribulation again. Along the way, a group of people exclaimed when they saw Jiang Qin. There were even people who followed him. They wanted to see if Jiang Qin was going to undergo tribulation or not. Little Taoist? After a dozen breaths, when Jiang Qin arrived at the tribulation area, his eyes lit up. He saw the disciple of heaven and earth pavilion, the little Taoist king. I am king, the little Taoist said seriously. Don't call me little Taoist. Although I am indeed a Taoist, I have a name. Little Taoist, why did you come to the Billowing Wave Academy this time? Jiang Qin asked with a smile. Are you here to spar with me? Hearing this, the king's face instantly fell. He waved his hand and said, Go, go, go. I won't spar with a monster like you. After saying that, the king revealed a playful expression and said, My senior brother wants to exchange pointers with you. Oh, are you here for revenge? Jiang Qin chuckled and said, Wait a moment. I'll go meet your senior brother after 3 tribulations. After saying that, Jiang Qin rose into the air and stood in the sky above the tribulation area. As the lightning summoning talisman rose into the air, the sky was suddenly filled with tribulation clouds, and 3 clouds appeared at once. Soul transcendence tribulation. 1 soul transcended 2 heavenly tribulations. However, the soul tribulation required 3 rounds. Jiang Qin was very confident. Transcending 3 heavenly tribulations at once would save him a lot of trouble. However, in the eyes of others, this kind of behavior was not just a matter of saving trouble. He was clearly courting death. Red Lotus karmic fire tribulation, 5 elements heavenly tribulation, purple gold heavenly lightning tribulation, exalted realm, 3 of the strongest heavenly tribulations. Transcending 3 heavenly tribulations at once. What's wrong with him? Does he have to seek death like this? Around them, a group of people exclaimed, and were even more dumbfounded. Who would transcend tribulation like this? Moreover, ordinary people would at most attract 1 heavenly tribulation at once. Only those who were especially monstrous could attract 2, and even then, they might not be able to survive. However, Jiang Qin attracted 3 heavenly tribulations at once. What was this? Was he still human? Sigh. Poor Vice Pavilion Master Li Yuan. The king stood outside the heavenly tribulation area, smiling bitterly in his heart. Ever since the king, Lan Xuanji, and Little Fire God lost without a fight and returned to the heaven and earth pavilion to explain the situation, the pavilion master was furious. In his anger, not only did he send disciples to cause trouble, but he also taught Li Yuan a lesson. Now, Li Yuan was still imprisoned in the heaven and earth pavilion's dungeon. Thinking about how the vice pavilion master, who was second only to one person, was imprisoned in the dungeon for the first time in his life, the king smiled bitterly. Boom! Boom! At this moment, the heavenly tribulation fell like a sea of lightning, filled with demonic flames, as if it was going to burn and destroy everything in the world. Jiang Qin was like a vigorous ancient tree. He stood tall and straight in the air. No matter how many bolts of lightning struck him, he still stood there motionless. He was more like a boulder, weathering the wind and the sun. What could 3 heavenly tribulations do to him? Just like that, while everyone was dumbfounded, Jiang Qin stood there in a daze for half an incense stick's worth of time. Then, there was no more then. After half an incense stick's worth of time, Jiang Qin was unscathed, and the 3 heavenly tribulation clouds disappeared. The heavenly tribulation was complete. One of the 4 souls could be considered to have been cultivated to perfection, and his Taoist seed had advanced to the 9th stage. Little Taoist, where's your senior brother? At this moment, Jiang Qin descended from the sky and stood beside the king. He asked with a smile, Come, let me see how strong the disciples of heaven and earth pavilion are. Ahem, keep a low profile. My senior brother has a bad temper. If he hears what you said, he'll probably kill you in the sparring session later, the king reminded. The disciples of heaven and earth pavilion are all proud and arrogant. They won't spoil anyone. Oh, Jiang Chun said softly, then raised his eyebrows and said, then the disciples of heaven and earth pavilion will have to spoil me from now on. After that, Jiang Chun paused for a moment and said seriously, and I won't spoil the disciples of heaven and earth pavilion. I know you're powerful, but my senior brother is already at the upper level of the earth realm. This time, I'm here purely to regain my dignity. You're no match for my senior brother, the king said. However, not long after he said that, Lan Xuanji hurried over from afar and whispered into the king's ear. What? Ninth senior brother lost to a woman. At this moment, the king almost screamed, his face full of disbelief. Lan Xuanji smiled bitterly and said, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it either. Who did he lose to? With ninth senior brother's strength, how many people below the heaven realm can be his match? The king said in a deep voice. He wondered what was going on this year. Heaven and earth pavilion was not going well. I know that person. She's a disciple of Sifang Divine Institute, Tian Shui, Lan Xuanji said, but in my impression, Tian Shui isn't that strong. Jiang Chun. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared not far away. She moved at an extremely fast speed and arrived in front of Jiang Chun in a few breaths' time. Tian Shui. Jiang Chun narrowed his eyes and looked at Tian Shui. His eyes were filled with confusion. At the same time, Jiang Chun secretly used a secret technique to investigate Tian Shui's background. The ancestor said that if I can defeat you, I'll be invincible among my peers, Tian Shui said. Don't use any secret technique. The ancestor added a restriction on me. You won't be able to find out my background. Your ancestor? Jiang Chun was stunned. Then he was shocked and said, Empress? Tian Shui didn't say anything. Instead, she pointed at a dojo not far away and said, shall we go and spar? No. Jiang Chun immediately shook his head and said, tell me about your ancestor first. Also, the 9 Glories ghost capturing technique. How did you survive? Chapter 258. Upon hearing this, Tian Shui shook her head and refused to talk about this matter. At the same time, Tian Shui didn't insist on sparring with Jiang Chun. Instead, she passed a silk book to Jiang Chun. The old ancestor asked me to pass this to you, Tian Shui said. What the F*** CK? The Empress gave this to me? I don't know the Empress. Jiang Chun was confused, but he still opened the silk book. However, when he opened the silk book, Jiang Chun was confused. There was a fragrance on the silk book, and there were 3 big words written on it, moi moi, and under these 3 words, there was a crooked heart pattern drawn on it. What does this mean? What does this mean? Jiang Chun was confused. Is this the love letter? Oh, please. I have only met the Empress once. She has taken a liking to me. Furthermore, how old is she? The Empress. When she was alive, I wasn't even born yet. This age gap, isn't it a little too big? Jiang Chun thought to himself, and his face turned pale. Just as Jiang Chun was about to ask Tian Shui what was going on, Tian Shui had already turned around and left. The Empress is expressing her love for me? If I reject her, will I be able to live? Jiang Chun was stunned. He really didn't understand what the Empress was trying to do. At the same time, the king and Lan Xuanji left hurriedly to find the 9th senior of Heaven and Earth Pavilion, who had been defeated by Tian Shui. In this life, you won't be able to escape from the palm of my hand. All of a sudden, a domineering and gentle voice rang in Jiang Chun's ears. The Empress! Jiang Chun exclaimed. He looked around, but didn't see the Empress. Don't look around. I am above the horizon. The Empress's voice sounded again. There will be a day when you will come back. And when that day comes, I will definitely sleep with you. The wind blew furiously. Jiang Chun stood in the same place, and the wind blew in a mess. Jiang Chun was puzzled. What on earth had happened after he had been reborn? His 3 disciples wanted to sleep with him, and now, even an unknown empress wanted to sleep with him. This isn't appropriate, right? Could it be that if you sleep with me, you'll be immortal? It couldn't be, right? Although Jiang Chen thought that he was very handsome, he was once known as the most handsome person in the ninth heaven divine realm. But all of you want to sleep with me, you're Jiang Chen? Have you received the challenge letter? Do you accept the challenge? At this moment, a group of youths walked over from afar. These people were all in high spirits and had valiant postures. Their brows and eyes were emitting a sense of confidence. At the same time, the aura they exuded was much stronger than ordinary cultivators of the same level. Fight, Jiang Chen said with a dark face. He was already annoyed and confused because of the sleep matter. Now that this group of people appeared, it was a good opportunity to vent his anger. I heard that you can even defeat the disciples of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, and you won without a fight, making them admit defeat. With this kind of strength, it shouldn't be a problem for you to fight the two of us, right? Someone mocked. Hearing this, Jiang Chen couldn't help but smile slightly and said, "What? You want to fight the two of us? You don't dare to accept?" That person said, "No." Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and said, "One against two. Are you looking down on me?" The youth was stunned, and then a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. His voice suddenly became cold and said, "Then what do you want?" "Come at me together," Jiang Chen said softly and flew into the air. In a few breaths, he landed in the training hall not far away. Arrogant, arrogant. These youths were furious. After shouting a few times, they rushed to the training hall. However, most of them stood at the edge of the training hall, unwilling to gang up on Jiang Chen. However, there were still 3 youths who planned to join forces. At that moment, they had already formed a triangle and surrounded Jiang Chen. "Be careful. Since this guy can make the disciples of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion admit defeat, he must have some skills. Give it your all." The 3 youths looked serious. Although they were here to challenge Jiang Chen and were prepared, they didn't dare to be careless. As the saying went, a person's name was like a tree's shadow. Jiang Chen's name could be said to be resounding in the 10 great academies. Boom! Boom! At that moment, Jiang Chen didn't hesitate and made the first move. He took 3 steps forward, and the sovereign descent shook the 9 heavens. The terrifying pressure was like an invisible mountain, and as his footsteps landed, it slammed into the bodies of the 3 people. Poof! Poof! In the next moment, the 3 youths' bodies shook and they stood on the spot. Their bodies were trembling and their faces were slightly pale. They were fighting against the suppression of the 9 heavens. However, when Jiang Chen took the 4th step, the 3 youths couldn't withstand it. They were all sent flying and fell to the ground. "Go! This guy is very powerful. Let's go together. Who cares about his reputation? Let's go first." At that moment, the group of challengers standing at the edge of the training hall were shocked and moved out together. No one was a fool. From the first steps that Jiang Chen had taken, they could see how powerful Jiang Chen was. Now, if they went up in 2s and 3s, they would definitely end up like the 3 youths just now. Since they were here, they wanted to fight. They didn't care about the process. They only cared about the result. Sky dance of brightness and darkness. Jiang Chen shouted softly. Black and white light flashed on his body, and 2 sharp swords formed by the power of heaven and earth appeared in his hands. His figure was like a black and white phantom, shuttling through the crowd. The sword light was sharp like a rain of swords. In just a few breaths, it covered the entire training hall. During this time, someone was hit by the sword light. Blood splattered and they were sent flying. There were also people who used martial techniques to fight against it, but the final result was still defeat. In just a dozen breaths, when the black and white light dissipated, only Jiang Chen was left standing in the entire training hall. As for the challengers, they all fell to the ground without exception. This was even when Jiang Chen held back. Otherwise, with the power of the killing technique, sky dance of brightness and darkness, these people would have been corpses long ago. Xiao Qingyi, I'll leave these challengers to you from now on. Jiang Chen looked at the edge of the training hall and asked with a smile, "Is there a problem?" Ever since Xiao Qingyi followed Jiang Chun, he didn't fight anymore. During this period, he had been cultivating the martial techniques and cultivation techniques of the six gates of hell. Now, Xiao Qingyi's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. It was as if he had transformed. "I'll take care of those below the earth realm," Xiao Qingyi said directly. "Coincidentally, I've made some progress in my cultivation recently. I want to try it out." "Okay." Jiang Chen nodded and left suavely. However, he didn't walk far when he saw a figure charge over from the sky in the distance. Then he suddenly landed in front of Jiang Chun. This person was a young man about 20 years old. He wore the robes of the martial pavilion and exuded a domineering aura. His hands were clasped with two thick black chains. His eyes and eyebrows were a rare purple color. "Tyrant!" Jiang Chen was moved. He stared at the young man in front of him, and his heart tightened. Chapter 259. As everyone knew, there were 16 professions in the world, but there were a few professions that were not included. That was because those professions were very rare and would not appear even once in 1,000 years. For example, Nayland Mayer was a war dancer, and Hualini was a spirit summoner. And now, the profession that the young man in front of him practiced was the extremely rare tyrant. The tyrant had the blood of the heavens, purple eyes, and purple eyebrows. His physical body was comparable to Zhang Lu's immemorial sacred body, and his body was as strong as the power of heaven and earth. Legend had it that a long time ago, the tyrant was known as the tyrant body of the heavens, and was also known as the strongest profession in the world. However, the tyrant was very rare. At least in Jiang Chen's memory, there had not been a tyrant for more than 3,000 years. Wakako from the Martial Pavilion is here to meet you on the orders of Palace Master Ji Chongyang. At that moment, the tyrant introduced himself and threw a letter of challenge in front of Jiang Chun. Battle of life and death. Jiang Chun glanced at the contents of the letter, and a cold look flashed in his eyes. He said, "Looks like the Martial Pavilion wants me dead. You and the Martial Pavilion have always been mortal enemies." Wakako said, "Now that you have entered the Billowing Academy, the big shots of the Martial Pavilion naturally can't do it themselves. Therefore, I am here to take your life." "I'm afraid you don't have that right," Jiang Chun said softly, and the sun and moon flickered in his eyes as he stared at Wakako. Then he tilted his head and asked curiously, "Your name is Wakako? Who gave you that name?" Wakako was stunned when he heard that and said subconsciously, "My grandfather gave it to me." As he said that, Wakako's face turned red. He was also quite embarrassed about his name. It was clearly the tyrant, and there was no space between heaven and earth. Only I could dominate the heavens. But this name had the same pronunciation as Xiao Xiao. This, and the profession of the tyrant, did not feel strange at all. At the same time, Wakako was a little confused. "I'm here to challenge you to a battle of life and death. Why do you care about my name? In this situation, in this atmosphere, is it really appropriate for you to ask such a question?" "No." At this moment, Jiang Chen decisively shook his head. He glanced sideways and said, "Sending an upper earth realm tyrant to challenge me to a life and death battle? Do you think I'm stupid? Aren't you very arrogant and confident? You don't dare to accept the challenge?" Wakako raised his eyebrows. "Then just announce your surrender." Of course, Jiang Chen wasn't happy to hear that. "Admit defeat? I'm sorry, but there's no such thing as admitting defeat in my dictionary. It's not that I'm afraid of you. It's just that I met a rare tyrant, and I don't want you to die prematurely." Jiang Chun said softly, "In this world, there should always be some opponents. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too boring to be invincible for a lifetime?" "You mean you can beat me?" Wakako sneered, his purple pupils revealing contempt and disbelief. As an overlord, there was a sense of dominance and invincibility in his heart. Ever since he started cultivating, Wakako was undefeatable in the same realm. Now, he was even able to shake an upper heaven realm cultivator with his upper earth realm cultivation base. This kind of strength, no matter where it was considered top-notch. And although Jiang Chun was famous in Wakako's eyes, he was still an ant. Once the battle started, Wakako was confident that he could suppress Jiang Chun with one palm. You only have the heart of an overlord, but you don't have the power of an overlord. In a life-and-death battle, the overlord is incomplete. Even if you beat me, you'll die because of the overlord's rampage. Jiang Chun said, so I won't accept this battle. When you have the power of an overlord, I'll fight you again. With that, Jiang Chun turned around and was about to leave. However, at this moment, Wakako flashed and blocked in front of Jiang Chun. Do you have to fight? Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows. Upper Earth Realm can't do anything to me. Even if you're an overlord, it won't work. How do you know that I don't have the power of an overlord? Wakako said in a low voice. Only I know this. One had to know that although Wakako was an overlord, as Jiang Chun said, he only had the heart of an overlord, but he didn't have the power of an overlord. Even he himself was very clear on this point. In the eyes of ordinary people, he was an overlord, but when he fought with others, he had never used the power of an overlord. Wakako had consulted the experts of the Martial Pavilion and flipped through ancient books, but he still couldn't find a solution. Now, Jiang Chun had seen through his shortcomings at a glance. Wakako was naturally curious. Of course I know, Jiang Chun said softly. A true overlord is reserved. The power of an overlord is hidden in the heart and not revealed in the eyes and eyebrows. Do you have a solution? Wakako asked hurriedly. Of course I do, Jiang Chun said mockingly. But why should I tell you? Why should I help you? Wakako was also stunned. He didn't know what to say for a moment. After all, he was a member of the Martial Pavilion, and the relationship between Jiang Chun and the Martial Pavilion was known by everyone. So, why should Jiang Chun help his enemy? I'm not really a member of the Martial Pavilion, Wakako said. If you're willing to help me, the Ruoff family will definitely thank you greatly. Leave the Martial Pavilion first. Jiang Chun waved his hand. Just like Xiao Qingyi, leave the Martial Pavilion and follow me. As he spoke, Jiang Chun walked away, leaving Wakako with his back as he said, You have to think carefully. Wakako stood in the same place and didn't chase after him. It was because he had to think. Leaving the Martial Pavilion was nothing. But the key was that if he left the Martial Pavilion, he would have to follow the Martial Pavilion's enemy, Jiang Chun. To the Martial Pavilion, Wakako was equivalent to betraying them. According to the Martial Pavilion's style of doing things, he would be executed. By then, even the Ruoff family wouldn't be able to protect him. As an overlord, I have to face the dangers of the world alone and fight against all living things. Why wouldn't I dare? After thinking for a while, the purple in Wakako's eyes became even more intense. Without waiting for Jiang Chun to walk out of sight, Wakako rushed over and stood beside Jiang Chun. I'll leave the Martial Pavilion and leave the Ruoff family. Wakako had thought it through. After leaving the Martial Pavilion would definitely not let him go. In that case, his family might be implicated. Only by leaving the Ruoff family at the same time could he protect both sides. As for his own safety, Wakako didn't even think about it. For an overlord, he could either rule the world or die. Between the two, he could only choose one. If he didn't even dare to choose this, how could he be called an overlord? Announce it, Jiang Chun said softly. While you're at it, make an oath. Otherwise, how would I know if you'll go back on your words? Okay, in 3 days, I'll come to the Billowing Waves Academy to find you, Wakako said in a low voice, then rose into the air and left. Jiang Chun glanced at Wakako's back as he left. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. He was secretly laughing in his heart. He was thinking about the people sent by the Martial Pavilion to deal with him. One was Xiao Qingyi, and the other was Wakako. Now, they were both following him. Were they here to deliver food to him? He wondered how the Martial Pavilion's headquarters would react when they found out about this. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.